Can't believe it. I can't believe it. And I don't think anybody else can believe it.
Me neither.
That I actually got the intro and theme song working. But here we are, episode 8. Welcome to the Coin Jam podcast. And we've finally got it figured out how to actually do things. And I say that as I'm still struggling to juggle everything. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming. We got a bunch of folks here already. We got 5 of our 6 co-hosts. I forgot to get myself an adult beverage. I might have to jump up and grab that at some point, but awesome. So thanks everyone for coming. This is actually a very special episode of the Coin Jam podcast. We are joined by Josh and Chance from the Canadian Arcade to share sharing the festivities and to share a very, very cool story about how the two of them helped put together and operate and run an entire arcade filled with classic games for a major Hollywood blockbuster TV show that hopefully they'll be able to mention without big Hollywood lawyers from LA shutting down this live stream midstream, but more on that later. I think we'll be joined by Liam from Retrobotics in just a moment. But we've got our typical co-hosts here, Jeremiah from Coin Op Corner, Kay from Prime Arcade, myself, Charlie from Overtime Arcade, and of course our 2 very, very special guest hosts, Chance and Josh. So welcome everybody. How's everybody doing?
Excellent.
Oh, Liam is
Awesome.
here.
Liam's
just
here
needs to be added to the stage. There we go. And we've got Liam in his new arcade. Very cool. Very cool. So yeah, I think, folks, if you're watching this for the first time, I know Josh and Chance put the word out. I think the entire country of Canada may be watching, and perhaps half of the U.S. So thank you. We've got quite a few viewers already. But, if you don't know me, Charlie from Overtime Arcade, if you're watching this on my YouTube channel. Thanks for joining. Jeremiah runs Coin Op Corner on YouTube. Kay runs Prime Arcade mostly on Facebook and Twitter, but he's got a YouTube channel as well. And Liam is one half of Retrobotics on YouTube with his wife, Sam, who is probably there somewhere in the background trying to distract him or keep their dog from distracting him. So why don't we start with Josh and Chance introducing themselves. Josh, I don't know if you want to go first. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and maybe you and Chance together can tell us about the Canadian Arcade.
Yeah, sure. So I guess, you guys are typically asking, like, where did you get started with arcade stuff? And I'd say for me, probably a good 15 years ago, I was playing with MAME and doing all that fun stuff, emulating. And then at some point, I saw ads on our Craigslist equivalent here in Canada, which is called Kijiji, and saw an arcade cabinet come up. And I thought, hey, like, that'd be pretty cool. Like, maybe I'll gut it and turn it into a MAME cabinet or something, right? And so I went to pick it up and brought it home. It was a joust cabinet, which I discovered it had been painted over. But once I figured out what it was, then I kind of felt like, I can't destroy this. Like, I need to bring it back to its former glory. So that's where the bug kind of started for me. And that was probably around 2013 or so, 2014, when I finally got a cabinet. And then from there, the collection grew a little bit. And then within a year or so, I bumped into Chance, and he'd been kind of doing his own thing in the community. But I needed a back door for a Popeye, and he happened to have an extra one cut. So that kind of led to us meeting, and then the story continues from there. So hand it over to Chance.
Great.
Very cool.
Hi. Yeah, that was basically it. That's how I met Josh. It was weird. I needed a back panel for one of my Donkey Kong cabinets, and basically just had 2 cut from a sheet of plywood and put it up on the thing. And he's like, "Hey, I'll come over and I'll get it." He brought a what was it, Crazy Kong board?
Kongorilla. So Kongorilla is a ripoff of Crazy Kong.
Yeah, which is a ripoff of Donkey Kong. So anyway, he brought that over, and then we just started chatting, and we ended up basically just talking about how we're both content creators, or we have aspirations for content creation and that kind of thing. And I'm a marketing guy and a bit of a graphic designer by habit and trade, I guess, is my previous world before, the world Josh and I are in now with film and television. But yeah, we just basically created the Canadian Arcade, and that was like, what, 7 years ago now, I think.
Yeah, 2015, end of 2015, I think was
2015.
probably when we kind of got started there. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's I guess us in a nutshell. How I got into the hobby was kind of a little different. I was interested in building a MAME cabinet at the time on the BOIOAC, and I was working for Apple at the time, and I posted on my Facebook wall like, oh, hey, I think I'm thinking of doing this with like a little joystick, picture of a joystick, and my buddy Rob at the time, he's like, you're never gonna build that. So I'm like, like you Rob, like it's gonna happen. And so I just started kind of planning it out, spending money, and then here I am. I've got this Flynn's arcade cabinet that I built from scratch, and I got sick and tired of dealing with the software side of things, so I got a regular arcade cabinet, like a cocktail arcade cabinet, and realized, oh hey, like they come on their own dedicated PCBs, and so started collecting and restoring, and that's where I'm at now. So it was literally a Facebook targeted ad that pushed me in the direction of wanting to build one from the get-go.
So you were influenced by the algorithm from an early age.
Well, kind of. I guess we had built a new mall here. This was like a good decade ago. We built a new mall in Calgary called Cross Iron Mills. Actually, shout out to my wife because she's one of the general managers of the mall now.
So literally we.
Yeah. And so I was walking through there years ago, and I walked by a company that shall not be named in the Calgary arcade market, and because we don't want to promote them. And I was like, oh, you can buy these games? Like, these are awesome. And I went in there and I talked to the girl at the desk, and I'm like, hey, can I get a Simpsons? And literally after that, I went home and I started Googling. So I think that Googling is kind of what tipped off the algorithm. And I got a tank stick ad in my Facebook feed the next day. And then I started thinking, oh, I should do this. And then that's when I posted the picture. So yeah, that's how I got into it. And that's how I guess Josh and I met each other. So, and the rest is internet history, which isn't so important.
And super popular channel on YouTube. I know you guys went on a bit of a hiatus with the Canadian arcade. I know myself and lots of other fans were probably really jonesing for more content. We can only watch you wash a monitor over and over again so many times. So I don't know if that was, related to your, in real life, daytime jobs, or if it actually has anything to do with what you guys are going to be talking about in a little bit. But, what went on with that hiatus?
Well, it was kind of like, I'm not going to say it was burnout, because like, I don't ever feel like I got burnt out. I know Josh got busy with a few things with work. I got busy with a few things with work. Around the time that we started working in Hollywood, unofficially started working in Hollywood, which is what we'll talk about in this. We were so focused on that. Like, we spent 3 months on set for HBO building this arcade. And then I spent another 2 weeks afterwards in their prop department for episode 1. For the 1970s intro of episode 1, building those cameras that they had, which we can show you as well. And we just got busy. And then after that, we got a phone call from another art director. He's like, hey, do you want to come work on this Netflix show? And after that, it was like, hey, do you guys want to come work on Fargo? And it was just like, it was a never ending, like, hey, are we ever going to have time for this? And what was funny is that when the writer's strike kicked off earlier in the spring, I was like, Josh, like, I've got like 7 episodes that I need to sit down and edit. And I'm like, okay, I'll get to it. I got to get other projects done around the house, and never got to editing it. And then now it's like, okay, well,
too late.
The writer's strike is over. Yeah. So,
well,
but like we've invested heavy in equipment and gear. Like, we're not dead. We're still here. We've just been busy.
Well, and just in time for the writer's strike to end, the U.S. government is heading for a shutdown. So, different parts of the economy will just be open and closed at different times.
Well, that won't affect us, because being Canadian, like the big problem with where we're sitting, like Josh and I are permits in the 2 main unions for film and television up here in Alberta. So like the Cinematographers Guild and the regular like crew
IATSE.
guild, the IATSE. So we're in that world. We're not striking. Neither of those unions are striking, but with the actors striking and with the writers striking, that's like 2 of the main foundations that provide most of the work here. Like, if you're not on a big Canadian show, like Heartland as an example, you're shut down. And that's unfortunate. But like at the end of the day, like the official position from, I guess, us is that like everyone in these unions, like they deserve a fair deal. And so like we 100% support every single part of that. And we've been watching it like a hawk from day one. A lot of good friends of ours have been out of work since the spring, and hopefully like there's light at the end of the tunnel now. So
yeah, sounds like it. Awesome. Okay, cool. So with intros out of the way, let's move to our sort of first segment, which is standard updates from everyone, kind of what's going on in their world. We talk about, fixing and collecting and that kind of stuff. So maybe we'll start with Jeremiah. Any recent pickups, any game room updates? What's been cooking in the coin op corner?
Well, I've been a good boy this month. I have no new coin ops since the last episode. In fact, if you watched my latest episode, I had that whole row of gumball machines in front of the camera. About half of those are gone now. So nothing really new in the arcade.
Yeah. Well, tell us about that video that you released about it, though.
Okay. So I mentioned in the last episode, in fact, I had on the couch a pile of gumball machine parts, and it ended up being the longest episode I've ever made, about nearly a half hour of content. And it's just taking a look at repairing a couple of gumball machines, some modern Northwestern machines, and then a really old version of basically the same model. But then in the end of it, I decided to give one of those Northwestern machines to some kids that are quite fond of me from church. And I thought it would be the coolest thing to have them put it together on camera. And that was a wonderful decision, because that's one of the funnier videos that I've ever had a hand in making. If you haven't seen that, it's like the most heartwarming thing you can ever watch. It's watching a bunch of kids try to figure out how to put together a coin op machine.
It is literally the most wholesome thing that I've seen in a long time. Now, just to tie this back to what we were previously talking about, these paid child actors, did they get any sort of, grief thrown at them for, crossing the picket line? Did anyone protest them, call them scabs for breaking the strike?
I'm just going to say allegedly.
Okay.
They've all been canceled, and they'll never work in this town again.
There you go. There you go. Awesome. Kay, how about you? What's going on? What have you picked up? What have you been working on?
I think the only thing I've really picked up recently was I got a Centipede on eBay at a really decent price. I had to go to El Paso to get it, which is about 4 hours one way. But it's complete. It doesn't quite boot, so the PCB is going to need some work. I'll change out the big blue and check my voltages and all that fun stuff. But I've already got a Centipede for sale right now anyway, so I'm in no rush to fix this one. As for videos and such that I've released recently, I've done a lot of work on a Nintendo Dual Versus system. Got it back up and running. It's got Super Mario Brothers on one side and Excite Bike on the other. And I repaired and recapped both those monitors, got them both looking pretty good. Just got to fix up the controls, and then I've got a guy that runs an arcade in my hometown that's going to be taking it, and it's going to be the showpiece of his Nintendo line. So it's already got a home. I just got to finish it up and get it to him.
Very cool. I am a little jealous of the Versus upright dual system, the sort of big giant side-by-side setup. I'd love to have one of those one day, and I think the only place I'd be able to put it is out here in the garage, but very, very cool.
Most of the ones I've seen ended up being converted.
Yeah, and so there are some bizarre conversions of that setup, right? Sometimes it's just normal. They almost treat it as like a Siamese twin arcade, and sometimes they do weird sort of, 4-player setups. But yeah, Cybermind Arcade in the chat says it's a perfect corner machine, and it definitely is. It's kind of what it's meant for. But really want to just take a moment here and say a huge thank you to Ezekiel, the Chicago Retro Ranger, with a $499 million super chat. He says, "Hey, Charlie and panel, love your videos. Charlie, keep up the amazing work." Thank you, Ezekiel. Really, really appreciate it. Yeah, how about Liam? Why don't we go over to you? What's cooking over in the glass pin arcade?
Well, I'm sitting at it. The big pickup of the last month is Sam and I went all the way up to the New England and picked up a Space Duel cocktail machine. This one actually mostly worked when we got it. It only had a dead pokey, but the guy who sold it to us was really, really nice when we pointed out the dead sounds, and gave us 2 ball blazers and an entire dead Space Duel board. So got home and it was a 5-minute fix. But I'm really happy with this. We had been looking for a Space Duel for a while, just because we love the color vectors. I got Tempest pulled out right here because I'm working on it. but we wanted the cocktail version since my wife and I like to drink tea and enjoy playing games simultaneously. So we really wanted to find the cocktail to complement our 4 others that are taking up a lot of floor space in the arcade. So that was the big pickup. Super happy with it.
So that's Cybermind Arcade in the live chat says that's 5 cocktails for you and Sam now, right?
Yes, that's 5. We have the Space Stool. We have an Asteroids that's right next to it. We've got a Crystal Castles and a Miss Pac-Man in the other room. And finally, we've got a millipede that I'm working on. And we just tracked down the last piece we need to put that millipede back together. So pretty excited for that.
Nice. You got to get that cocktail up on full height.
So if you want a centipede, I've got one for sale right now.
No, we have a centipede upright in the corner.
No, you need a cocktail.
You need the cocktail, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it the 19-inch version though? That'd be the one to get.
No, it's the 13. But I mean, 13s are harder to find, so it's rare.
I can
What?
I can tell you from experience, like straight up from experience, because I've got a row going of Atari cocktails with Asteroids Deluxe, the Warlords 4-player cocktail, and then I'm working on a Tempest cocktail right now. Having all 4 of those in a row, having them up at the 40-inch bar height level is a game changer because they take up less space because you don't have the stools. And it's just great. Like you can stand there and like Josh and I use it as the table for our set in my arcade.
Yeah, the Space Stool cocktail, I know that the Tempest one is large too, but I think the Space Stool might be slightly larger. It is ridiculously huge when it's sitting next to the Asteroids cocktail. It looks like it almost has 1.5, maybe twice the surface area.
I think it's the same size as the Tempest cocktail. I'm pretty sure. A good friend of ours, Adam, here in town or just south of town. He's in our little like circle of collectors in Calgary. He's got a Space Duel cocktail, and that is just awesome. And it shares a lot of the same parts with the Tempest. So
yeah, the only difference is really the monitor orientation in the Tempest cocktail makes it a little narrower.
Yeah,
the Space Duel is super wide because it just has the monitor in a separate box hanging off the side.
Yeah.
The only downside to the Space Duel cocktail, though, for those who aren't aware, is the Space Duel upright has 4 speakers to give you that super sound, but the cocktail only has the 1. So that's the sacrifice that you're making.
Yeah, and those speakers pump too. Like I've got one of the uprights downstairs in my collection, and that thing, you turn that thing on in the middle of the night, you can hear it up the street. There's so much bass coming out of it.
Yeah, the loud one we've got is Firefox. That one is insanely loud when it's
can confirm.
Yeah,
and it's got fans.
Like 20% volume.
It sounds like a jet sort of sitting on the tarmac, ready to spin up and take off.
Nice,
awesome. So, Chance, tell us more about what you've got going on. Like you mentioned that Tempest cocktail. I know you've got a bunch of projects in your basement. What's in your garage? What's happening there?
Oh man, I had to put up a whiteboard downstairs in the basement to get all my projects sorted out when the strikes happened. So I was like, let's get everything figured out. Okay, I know I'm going to miss something. I have first and foremost, yes, the Tempest cocktail that I'm building. I've got a Sky Skipper because I'm part of the Sky Skipper program. So I've got number 20 of that. I am building a screen accurate Wild Gunman cabinet from Back to the Future 2, which is kind of poetic because like the guy who built that for the movie, that's the job that I have now. So like to me, for me to actually build one is like, I think is poetic, and I love those games. So what else am I building? My wife's got a tapper that I'm assembling right now from like scratch. So we're doing a scratch built tapper. What? There's one more. Josh, help me out here. What am I missing?
Oh, I don't remember, man.
Marble Madness is done. Yeah, yep. Marble Madness is just finished. We're not going to do a video series on that, but Marble Madness is done.
Missed opportunity.
Well, it is and it
Great
isn't. Like we did a couple of things on that, but I think like I just needed to get back into the swing of it when the strikes happened, because I was so far in the work world, doing 14-hour days on set. So it's just like focus back on creating good work and then focus back on filming good work. It was kind of my mantra on it. And then, two recent pickups. I got a Rockola fantasy cabinet from a buddy of mine.
Nice.
So it's not going to be a fantasy when I'm done with it. It's going to be a nibbler. Nibblers are good, but I'm gonna put so I've been talking with Aaron, like Crafty Mac, and we're talking about some BitKit stuff on the channel, so maybe more on that down the road. So that'll get BitKit, that'll be like a multi Rockola, and then I also, a friend of ours just gave me a Star Castle.
That's super cool.
I don't know.
Is it working?
Is it working? It's not. It's the board's out. It's still back at his place. But he said the board works, and he said the monitor works. Everything's fine. It's just like the cabinet's in a bad way because all of the particle board started failing on it, and some like went and like painted the whole kick panel with like, it looks like a child has painted the side art onto the kick panel and then taken off the coin door and put a big piece of a like steel plate with a little tiny like midway button on it. So
yeah, we actually got one like that too. We got an Asteroids that came out of Disney World's arcade and had a big blank coin door with a single button in the middle.
Yeah, but did it look like a 4-year-old had painted the side art on the kick panel?
Well, Jeremiah found one today near him that looked like, again, a 4-year-old had painted the kick plate on a Ms. Pack.
Well, don't get me wrong. We've seen plenty of people like hack some paint jobs. There was we had a pinball tournament.
That game.
Yeah,
it was the Mario game, Mario Brothers pinball.
Yeah,
the little mini one, I think.
I should probably bring up pictures of that. But there was YEG Pin, which is the big Edmonton pinball festival. So they're about 4 hours north of us in like central Alberta. Every year they have this big pinball tournament, and one year Josh and I were invited to come down and like kind of like work like help like live stream a little bit, and we'd film some episodes with a pinball company. And we noticed there was there's two Mario Brothers pins. There's the little stubby,
there's like a little mini one, and then there's like
Mushroom,
a full size one. Yeah,
the Mushroom Kingdom one, that big blue one, the full size. So somebody, I gotta find those pictures. Somebody had taken the full size one and because the playfield had just been ratched, and they repainted a bunch of the characters. So not only does it look like that, that derpy picture where the one lady restored the picture of Jesus and it like looks really bad. It's that same kind of effect where like Princess Peach looks all derpy. And even worse than that, the paint that they used was like an oil-based paint. So it's like, it added texture to the playfield. So when the ball slowly rolls over it.
Every time you say derpy, I'm thinking of Mega Man with his eyes going in two different directions.
Yeah, that. Yep. I should find those pictures, but yeah, it was bad. So like we've seen that our fair share of bad paint jobs up here too. So I'm not surprised.
Yeah. And Josh, what's been cooking in your workshop and in your arcade?
Well, I generally live vicariously through Chance on all his projects, and often I will find things online that I'm like, well, I kind of want it, but I don't want it that bad, but maybe Chance wants it. So I'll throw it his way, and then usually he ends up going and getting the game, and then I get to go to his house and help him work on it or do a video on it or whatever. So
yeah, and then I get to look over at my wife and like
I'm in danger.
Like
so I haven't bought too much. I haven't bought too much the last few years. The last big purchase, I did a Wizard of Oz pinball machine just around the time, just before COVID. And then I have a couple projects on the go. We've got a Galaxian that's been sitting in my garage for probably about 6 years now that I just need to get around to that one. And recently started kind of getting warmed up to work on a Mortal Kombat 2. I do have all the guts for the Mortal Kombat. I've got the board and the harness and monitor and all of that. And I just kind of need to hook it up and get it working. But most of all, I need a cabinet. And I do have a cabinet sitting in my garage right now, and it's great. It's perfect. There's no water damage, but it needs all the artwork and it needs a bunch of stuff. And I don't know. It's just not, I don't think that's the cabinet for me. So I'm going to hold out for maybe just find someone that's got a Mortal Kombat 2 that needs a little work, and I'll just throw my guts into that, and maybe that'll be the way I go. But that's kind of what I got on my plate right now.
Mortal Kombat 2, I feel like we'll be talking about that game a little bit more in just a few minutes.
Yeah. You're allowed to say the show. Like
HBO The Last of Us.
Yeah, we're I did put the link out on my Facebook. You have to bleep
it out with the
allegedly.
No, man.
Settle, Charlie, settle.
We'll go hard.
Yeah. So as for me, I've been busy, but not in the way that Jeremiah is concerned about my marriage and my budget and all that. I actually haven't picked up a game since July.
Ooh.
I picked up 5 games in July, but a grand total of 0 cabinets in August and 0 cabinets in September. And today is the last day of September. So 0 cabinets for 2 months. I've been spending all of my money on artwork and PCBs and that kind of stuff. Lots of big orders with arcadepartsandrepair.com and actually Bob Roberts, believe it or not, and some other places too. So haven't picked up any cabinets. Been really, really busy on projects though. I got the Ms. Pac-Man completely stripped down to bare wood, getting that prepped for painting. One big thing I realized, so I've been waiting on stencils from this old game since late last year, and like I'm hearing through the rumor mill that run is about to start shipping. But in the meantime, I did pick up a unused but sort of on the secondary market a set of stencils from this old game, but they don't have the instructions, and importantly, they don't have the paint codes in them. I know for years people used a bunch of certain paint codes from Glidden, but Glidden changed their kind of like base tinting and whatever. So all those old, I know I'm slacking, Dan. All those paint codes are wrong. So if anyone out there has legit current paint codes for Ms. Pac stencils, I would really appreciate it. So shout out on that. I've been working on Qbert. I got my board, a main PCB actually from Dell from Delusionals Arcade, who's been in the chat here tonight. We did a video sort of getting that monitor and the PCB working. Still need to work on the cabinet big time, especially the control panel. The soundboard's not working just yet. Been working on the Pango. The big thing I did with Pango was fix the metal control panel, which had been converted to Time Soldier. So had to repair a bunch of extra holes that have been drilled into the metal control panel. So I'm now a master welder with JB Weld. And I think that project will maybe be done with one more video. I got the right over here, the Irish Kangaroo basically done. Everything's working. The joysticks put back together. And the biggest really cool thing is I got the bezel, the sort of combination bezel and marquee single piece of plexi from Ron and Joe from Joe's Classic Video Games and Lions Arcade down in Rock Hill, South Carolina. So Ron and Joe, thank you. It looks beautiful, absolutely amazing.
When it came in the mail,
just there.
When it came
in what's that?
When it came in the mail, was it broke?
No, I was. That was my backup plan. If things didn't go well, I was going to do a whole riff on the It's Broke thing that they're known for. But yeah, and other than that, been really busy on other stuff with the channel. We did a monthly members only live stream. A bunch of the Overtime Arcade channel members are here. They got to see that. I got my sort of home Wi-Fi setup kind of optimized to have much better connection out here in the garage. I've been doing some streams out here because I've got working games out here in the garage, as you can see behind me. The marquee light for Depth Charge has unfortunately gone out. I got a game right here that is sort of getting a sneak preview. This is going to be revealed in my next episode coming out tomorrow. It's kind of messed up. You can't quite see it. And we did a playthrough of a couple of these games. I got a PCB stuck into this Dynamo HS7. So if you want to see more about those, watch my video tomorrow. If you can't wait, become an Overtime Arcade channel member. They've been watching it since about 9 a.m. this morning. So yeah, lots of stuff going on here at Overtime Arcade. So let's go back around the horn. Sort of one more question before we jump to the main event, which is kind of, looking forward. What's everyone got cooking, right? The next video or next whatever that you're going to be releasing, the project that you're currently working on, some sort of part, a PCB, a piece of artwork, whatever that you're looking for. Why don't we start with Jeremiah? I know you've got a stack of Pac and Miss Pac PCBs that you're working on. When can we expect the next chapter in that series?
I feel like you've asked me this question on the past 4 episodes.
So you're expecting it?
Yeah. So the answer is that sweet refrain of "it'll be done when I fix it." So
I love that.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I spent 6 hours on it one Saturday and made no progress. So I have zero motivation to do that again. I think at this point I need to go back and I think I also said this last episode, and just check for shorts. I usually wear pants, but I think the issue with this is going to be shorts, so I need to go through. I had to fix a lot of broken traces, and I think I made some assumptions with a few of them, and that I'm not going to say that is the issue, but that's the only thing I can't 100% say I've checked. So hopefully I can take care of that in a day's time. And I've actually got the final episode, allegedly, of Coin Out Corner completely filmed, but I can't even start editing it until I get this Pac-Man machine fixed, and then I can edit that video and then start on the last episode. So yeah, a lot is hanging on those Pac-Man boards getting done. So I am too motivated to get that done.
Yeah, so maybe don't ever finish the pack, and then the pile of packs, and that way Coin Op Corner will never
keep
end.
Having these interim episodes. Yeah.
Well, and I've also been teasing Jeremiah for a while, kind of telling him, I'm like, I've got a spare Ms. Pack board. I've got a spare Ms. Pack board that I thought was working. And then I had an opportunity to test it the other day, and it's got the exact same issue that that one of Jeremiah's boards have. So that's just how it goes sometimes. Just circling back to the live chat here, Dan from Outrun the Neon Sun. Welcome back to the world, Dan. Dan's giving me crap for slacking on the Ms. Pack. Ty suggests rattle cans. Absolutely not. I will be using my HVLP setup that I got, super state-of-the-art, high class from Harbor Freight. And Wayne says they don't come with instructions or paint codes. His Burger Time set didn't anyway. Well, that's on the website. When I ordered it, and it's still listed there, it comes with instructions and paint codes. So I'll be very, very disappointed if I don't get them.
Do you want me to give Rich a call?
you got his number?
Yeah.
I don't want to get banned, so maybe we can do this sort of through a pseudonym.
Rich has been pretty good to us, actually. If we've ever needed anything, he's always been on point with us. If we were building something, we've done a few things with him, but we try to be neutral with all the parts and stuff, like all the different artwork and providers.
It's worth the wait, but sometimes that wait is just it's painful because it's so good, and like the prices are great too, right? Super high end stuff for a great price, but fast, cheap, and good. Pick two, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So,
well, that's what I was going to say about the Ms. Pack board. Why don't you just the bit kit? Like Aaron's board is just so good. Like,
I am getting
what that make.
I
do have plans for the bit kit coming up soon, but not for this project. Awesome. Kay, how about you? What's cooking? What's planned? I know you released a video today, kind of promoting this podcast, but what's the future of Prime Arcade?
I'm not sure what I'm going to work on next. I need to get a couple projects fixed up so I can put them up for sale and kind of refresh my for sale ad. But I have a lot of things that have just been sitting in the shop for repairs for a very long time that I should probably get to. Like there's a Silent Scope EX I need to do a monitor repair on. A Galaga I need to do a monitor repair on. I've got 4 or 5 pinball machines lying around that clients have brought in that I really need to get done. So the next videos are probably going to be things that I'm fixing up for other people. But beyond that, there's still, 8 dozen machines waiting on me. So there's no lack of content. There's just lack of me doing it.
Yeah, and you got to get internet over there one time so you can do a podcast from the workshop and just have all of the sort of graveyard of machines, the boneyard of machines behind you.
I'd pretty much have to do, like what Jeremiah has done, and get the internet that goes to the middle of nowhere, because mine is outside of the city limits and it's considered a commercial property and doesn't have any lines going to it. So in order to actually get internet, I would have to have a company come out, move lines into the building, and then I'd have to pay commercial prices for the worst internet you could possibly think of, the slowest internet possible, for like 8 times the price of what I pay for here at the house. So yeah, I probably won't do that.
Well, and you mentioned that. I think we all need to sort of applaud Jeremiah, who did recently get Starlink set up at home, and his connection is perfection right now. Like he's moving his arms and you're seeing them actually move as opposed to, the one FPS from before.
Josh has a Starlink box right above him. I've got one down here by my feet. We use them.
Awesome.
They're amazing. We use them on film sets when we're out in the middle of the boonies. So
yeah, I use them. I have one. Well, we have one at work too, and it's awesome. I don't have one at home, but it's really, really great.
We see them in Alberta all the time because people will strap them to the top of their pickup trucks and drive like through the city, because like they're often like at an oil site somewhere off in northern Alberta, and Starlink is just massive out here. So
yeah, awesome. Liam, how about you? What's next for Retrobotics? What's the next episode looking like? What's the next project?
Oh, next project. Well, we're trying to get all the ones that are done in the workshop sort of in parallel right now. Smash TV, I think the last bits of it, I'm waiting on only the control panel, have everything else to put it back together. So as soon as that control panel arrives, we can do a little build of Smash TV. I've tested the PCB, everything works there. Still struggling with that lunar lander / asteroids. The asteroids board is giving me trouble, but I have now the PCB and plexi for the lunar lander control panel I found in a scrapyard. So that is just about put back together. I've got some funky idea for a custom harness for the lunar lander panel, so I can get the mission plexis to work with an asteroids board, and sort of prototyping that. So that'll be interesting to see. I'm thinking if I can get it to work, I can do some cool attract mode animations and things using the mission plexi lights. So that might be a fun thing to show. And finally, the millipede. The last parts for that should be coming in soon, and then we will have lots and lots of cocktails. So nice. Well, I think we should avoid getting any more for the time being.
And I had felt bad because I had promised Liam, because like the thing that he was missing, and this is hopefully not spoilers, was the bracket for mounting the vertical monitor in the cocktail, right? And I've got that Dig Dug cocktail that's been converted to Do Run, and even though that mounting bracket has been hacked up a little bit, it is the same one that's in Millipede. So I had been meaning to measure it for Liam so they could fab their own, but it sounds like somebody on Clav came through with a spare one for you, so that's great.
Yep. Yeah, really excited that we'll be able to mount that. I've got a really hacked together monitor, but as soon as we get those brackets, it should be able to slot right in.
Cool. And then for Josh and Chance, what's the future of the Canadian arcade looking like? Does Chance just have to sequester himself and edit those 7 videos, or what's cooking? What's coming up next?
Well, I'll tell you that
Josh needs
Chance
to
has
edit
been
too,
pretty
okay?
busy this summer. Yeah. So Chance has been pretty busy this summer. Like I got a little distracted, I'm going to admit, when that Nintendo game came out in May, Tears of the Kingdom, that ate my whole early summer and most of July. And I didn't get a whole lot done.
Me too.
And Chance, you managed to pry yourself away from it there, I think, probably before July came around. But you went hardcore on those 3 or 4 cabinets that you were on, and I know you took a lot of pictures.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we're probably going to do like a follow-up episode or something on that, maybe.
We've been talking about like an arcade tour video, and then there's also an option to like, hey, here are 3 projects that we've just recently completed. So I think there again, but like I've got half a dozen things sitting in the pipeline too. So it's just sitting down and editing them. The problem is a lot of the times we'll film something and then we don't like the audio quality, or we screwed up on some very important part. So like we have to go back and do reshoots and whatnot. We're kind of getting a little too picky with our quality. Like Josh went out and invested heavy in cinema and a cinema camera and some really nice equipment. Partly because we need to be able to work with that stuff for our real job. But then we can also use it, like the intro of the We're Not Dead episode that we put out like 8-9 months ago. That intro where you like the little, our buddy Cody is playing in my arcade and I like come down the stairs in a robe. That was filmed with Josh's cinema camera. So like we want to do more of that kind of stuff, but it's just kind of figuring out where we have time. And now that the weather's getting crappy here, I think we'll be more in our house.
Yeah, I'm getting the itch to kind of work on that stuff a little bit more now and put the camera gear to use. We've got a lot of cool gear that I feel guilty we haven't used enough yet. So it's a good excuse to do that. And
we just have to get good at creating content, though.
Well, that's the thing, right?
And
we've actually
saying
we did it.
I was going to say the 6 weeks of nice weather every year in Alberta have passed, so you're back into hibernation.
Oh, it's not nice weather anymore. We used to call that nice weather, but now we just call it road construction.
Oh no. Well, and like speaking of content, I think isn't your the most viewed video on your channel the hailstorm?
3 hailstorms.
Wow.
We have
Like
3
golf ball
separate
size hail.
Well, there's a golf ball size hail one. There's and that was Josh's house. There's a funny story behind that, but we'll save it for another time. There's a year or 2 years later to the date almost, there's a tennis ball size hail one. And then in the middle of those 2 hailstorms, I had one here on the west side of Calgary because he lives in the north. Him and his family live on the north, and I live on the far west. And so like we never get hail on the west side of the city, and we got a hailstorm. So we posted all 3 of those, and they keep the lights on, essentially.
Yeah. We were just like, hey, let's throw this up there and see what happens. And yeah, it's interesting. I think that one video from 2016 has close to 4 million views. Yeah, and then I'll tell you, okay, we had another storm in 2020, and it was 10 times worse than the one in 2016. And I thought for sure this video is going to go like way crazier, more viral. It didn't at all. I think we got 150,000 on it or something. It wasn't much at all.
I was editing some stuff last night, Josh, and I actually modified the name of that file just like to pull that lever to see if the tennis ball one will do better with a different file, like a title. So we'll see. But I mean, like it's nice because like every couple of months, you know, we get an AdSense drop from those and a little bit from some of our other videos, and we just throw that back into the channel or buy like a case of beer.
Did it cover the deductible on the insurance claim you had to make with the hail damage?
You know, it's interesting because I have a clause in my contract that says if the damage exceeds a certain dollar amount, that I don't have to pay a deductible. And both times in 2016 and 2020, I didn't have to pay the deductible. It was over like, I think it was like $30,000 worth of damage. Then there's no deductible.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
What's really crazy about those videos, or especially the main one with the millions of views on it, is that the amount of comments that we get where people are like, hey, all of you idiots who left your cars out on the street, like you shouldn't have done that. You should have parked them in your garages. And it's like in Josh's neighborhood, there are like 2 or 3 families per house because it's a predominantly ethnic neighborhood. And like they're bringing families over, and like it's just cheaper, especially because like the housing rates and whatnot in Canada right now are through the roof. So it's like they have 4 or 5 freaking cars. And of course, they're all like up and down the street and parked in the driveway and in the garage. So it's like the damage was real. Like it was massive. This was like, 5 years ago, and half the houses in that neighborhood are still needing new siding.
2020, it's mostly cleared up now. There's the odd house that's not fixed now, but yeah, it was pretty bad. Like literally every house, I don't know how many thousands of houses in this sort of area that got hit, and then they called it in the top 5 worst storms in Canadian history. So
we'll get news outlets from across the world every once in a while, like emailing us like, hey, can we license your footage? And it's like, you can use it for free, just like say, you know, from the Canadian arcade.
There you go.
That's
how
really
you're
but
popping up big all over the world. Yeah, very cool. So yeah, for me, I've got a bunch of projects, and like I'm in the frame of mind where I'm trying to wrap up all the projects that are really close. So, you know, for the Ms. pack, it's just getting those stencils painted. For the Pango, it's really reassembly, rewiring the control panel, and putting the art package on. For the Dig Dug cocktail, I'm going to recap the G07 FBO and fix the power setup, which is a mess. And then I'm going to leave it as do run for a while, at least until I get sick of it. And then let's see, after I've got the Cuber still to work on, and I've got 7 more pickups. Now I know I haven't picked up anything since July, but I got seven games that I haven't done pickup videos for. I'm going to start combining them, doubling them up. So 2 of them are going to be featured tomorrow, including this absolutely bizarre thing right here. So I think we'll go ahead and transition over to the main event. While we're doing that, we'll segue through a couple of questions that have popped up in the live chat. Cybermind Arcade a few minutes ago asked, has anyone seen an arcade bar with a stage for live music? Seems like no one has gone that route in my area. Great question. I know a couple of folks chimed in and sort of said, that's great idea. That's actually happened in my sort of somewhat local area. So down in Fredericksburg, Virginia, which is maybe an hour and a half away from me, Reclaim Arcade is an awesome arcade down there. It's not the biggest one in the world, but it's quite nice. I've done a video tour of it. Kind of, you walk in and it looks just like a used game store. and then you go through a back room that's sort of set up like an 80s living room, and then you go through one more door and it's opened up to 50, 75 games, pinball, whatever. Just after I did that tour, they did a major renovation. They took down a wall and they set up a stage for live music, DJ, whatever, so you can like go back and forth between dancing, checking out the music, and it's all one big open area to the games and whatnot. So great question there. We also had a question from Simple Gaming Dad, who asks, I have an Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 arcade machine that the board is not in an original cabinet. How would I go about locating where to install the wiring for the run button? I think, for me, first thing I think of is, go to the manual, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's the conversion manual, I think they had a UMK3 dedicated maybe, but, first stop for that for me always is the arcade archive. So arc.xmission.com. They've got, manuals, high res scans of manuals for virtually every game. So that's generally the first place that I go through. Arcade Maze says, boy, howdy, Charlie has projects. Nothing compared to Kay, but I'm a rank amateur and Kay does this professionally. So very, very cool. So why don't we, with all that kind of boring stuff out of the way, let's go to the main event, the thing that everyone is here for. We got quite a few viewers going on right now. So Chance and Josh, you guys recently had a very, very awesome experience that kind of combined your professional and, hobby lives in a really cool way. This was a very public thing too. Lots of people saw this, including myself and others. People were talking about it. And I think people were talking about it even before they knew that the two of you were connected. So this was being discussed on TLOU, right? The TLOU forums. There's often, people will mention when it comes up in a movie or a TV show or whatever, classic arcade video games and pinball, whatever, just sort of, penetrate into pop culture, right? And people celebrate that and whatever. And this recently happened with a really well-known show, HBO's The Last of Us. And it turns out that you guys were behind all of this. So maybe just to kind of, set the stage, how did the two of you even get connected to any of this in the first place?
Well, I mean, I was walking down the street one day and a van pulled up and they threw a hood over my head and I smelled chloroform and then I just woke up on their set. So I
thought Canada was like super safe. How does something like that happen?
That's how I ended up married.
Wow. Your wife's not watching the live stream, is she? I know mine is.
Paying attention to anything I do.
Oh, okay. It was actually a little weird to address, one point we didn't tell anybody. We actually kind of had like a little under the table bet with one of the art directors about one of the guys from the art department that found us that we weren't going to tell anybody because when we built the Mortal Kombat, we wanted to make it look as real as possible. Our mantra on set, not to get ahead of myself, but the mantra on set was don't do what Stranger Things did. Like all the power to the guys that were on that show. And it was a great episode or a great couple of episodes with that. But we just like the little things stuck out to us, like the LCDs. And we wanted to just take it one step better. So we kind of basically told our buddy Joel, like, we're not going to tell anybody in the community. We're going to see if they can figure it out. And then I guess eventually the threads on TLOU and on Pinside just started showing up and Josh and I just jumped in and kind of just started posting pictures and talking and saying, hey, like, hi, that was us. But how it happened was actually really weird. I was working for a medical technology company. I was their head of marketing. And I quit that job. And so I was just kind of thinking like, I'm just going to take the fall off and just do nothing, focus on, stuff around the house. And I got a call from one of our really good friends who owns a pinball bar downtown. Shout out to Arlen and Pin Bar. We actually have a bunch of arcade games there as like a coin op thing. And they had gotten approached months ago by a TV show that was, but we had no idea who it was. They were just like looking for, maybe some rentals or something like that. Cause that's part of the whole pre-production side of things is they want to, they're looking for rentals, but they're not going to tell you who they are yet. And then I guess they had through a connection of Arlen, I think his sister or someone knew this art director. And he reached out to Arlen and said like, hey, we're doing this thing for HBO's The Last of Us. We need someone who can swap a couple of monitors out and make them camera friendly. because a lot of people don't realize this, but if you've ever pointed a camera at one of your CRTs, they don't play nice with film cameras. They don't play nice with certain aspects of a film camera. And you can see that right now on the back in Charlie's screen, how some of them are doing it, but some of them aren't. And it's a whole big technical ball of wax that I won't get into, but they messaged Arlen and they were like, hey, like, do you have someone who can swap out for some LCDs? And he called me up and said like, hey, like, you're not doing anything. Do you want to show up and help out? And I touched base with the guys. I went over to their set. So for those of you who don't know, that the mall that they filmed that episode in was actually a real mall here in Calgary. It was actually a mall that when I moved back to the city a number of years ago, I used to go get my keys cut, like it was like my local mall. And so most of the mall had been shut down except for some of the big anchors. And it was just like happenstance that, Craig and them could bring the show and film in that mall. So they had taken over it. And where I think where the Sears was, Josh, was like their set deck lockup. And they had, well, let's go to the pictures. I've got pictures of this. They had a bunch of arcade games. Oh, here's the, yeah.
There's the
earlier.
That's bad.
Oh no, that's mine. I did that. I don't know how that got there.
Anyway, so they had, in this old ripped apart mall, they had a few games kind of ready to go. And like, I just showed up and I guess this was in like November, and I didn't take any pictures until like December 1st, which is when this picture was taken. But it was basically like, let's swap some monitors in. And while this was going on, I was starting to meet some of the other members of the crew and some of the producers. And they were like, yeah, like, we've got a problem. Like someone's got to have to, teach the girls how to play Mortal Kombat so it looks realistic. And I'm thinking in the back of my head, like, I got a guy. And then they're like, well, we also have to try and figure out how to record it. Like we need to be able to get the script beats from the game like so it's like playable and you can like look over the girl's shoulder and like they had all these technical problems that they couldn't figure out. But I was like, I got a guy. And then so I'm like, this entire time I'm like, hey Josh, like he was busy with something for work and it was really important. But I was like, dude, you gotta like set aside some free time. Like I need your help. Like I can't do this without you. And it's like, so, Josh got involved and we papered him in two. And at this point, they're kind of like, we had shown them kind of what the Mortal Kombat cabinet looked like with an LCD in it. And one of the executive producers,
beautiful,
right? Like it's bad. And we were saying to them, like this whole artwork bezel thing that's going on. Like we said, like, that's not legit. Like that was made after the fact by a member of the community a number of years ago. And it's not realistic for like the time frame of the show. So now we're catching continuity errors, and they had already shot this cabinet with that bezel. I think in episode 4, Ellie finds it in a gas station.
3 or 4. Yeah.
And so they're like kind of panicking in a bit. They're like, oh crap. Like, okay, well it's good because it'll show that it's a separate cabinet from the one the girls find. And I'm like, okay, but like rivet counters, we call them in the industry rivet counters. They'll like look at that tank in the World War II movie and go, hey, that's not right. It should have 20 rivets rather than 5. Like but it's like we wanted to be as accurate as possible. So this is kind of like the original shop that we had. And we were just doing proof of concept. I had set up a little workbench and a work table in there. And then they had already brought in a bunch of other games as well. Some Rockola cabinets, and that's a Rockola cabinet on the left with a Final Fight, and a Gorilla in a Maketrax cabinet. And we found just anything that they could find at auction, essentially, to populate this. And when we started talking to them, we're like, hey, oh look, you need a Ms. Pac-Man. Like the one that they had, that's not a Ms. Pac-Man. That's
no.
Yeah, with Ms. Pac-Man on it. And we're like, we said to the executive producer in the conversation about the LCDs and whatnot, we're like, we know you guys are going to spend a lot of money on this, but like we know you probably don't want to cater to the 1%, like the elitists of us in the community. And she turned to me and she goes, no, like it's vitally important that we cater to the 1%. Whatever you guys need to make this as legit as possible, make this as legit as possible. And I think that was the foundation of, oh, here's our green light to go ham on this. And so at that point, I said to the art department, because we were liaising with the art department the entire time. Everyone we worked on that show, by the way, is terrific, 100%. I can't think of a single bad experience we had in the 3-4 months we worked on that show. And so the art department, we're like, well, Josh has got a Ms. Pac-Man cabinet, and I've got a Street Fighter cabinet, and like all these other games that were listed in there, like a Daytona, like we can get a Daytona. So we started kind of going through our collections and then going through the collections of some of our friends and collecting what we could. And I guess we had actually collected twice as many games that are shown in the show, because half of them, so this Turtles as an example, were cut by legal because they just couldn't get the rights to show it, or the company wanted too much money and it just didn't make sense. And there was a lot, like there's a lot of questions that have happened about it, like, hey, well, why wasn't so and so, or why was this changed? And it was unfortunately it's just due to a lot of the red tape. Funny story, that Turtles cabinet, I actually was able to, the only game I was actually, that and the Ms. Pac-Man I just showed, this one, I was able to buy these off of HBO. And this one here,
oh nice,
yeah, this was in my living room. I surprised Vanessa, she's my wife now. This is how I proposed to her, was after we were done filming. I hid the coin, or the ring, in the coin box. It was delivered to us by HBO a couple of months after we wrapped, and she came down and she opened it up and she was on her knee like, this is a ring, like so yeah,
soulmates.
That backfired on her.
So did they so what it sounds like is they didn't have, or maybe it was like a combination, right? Like they didn't have a, like, hey Chance, hey Josh, here is a super detailed set of requirements for every single thing that they wanted, and they told you to go make it happen. They kind of had some sort of idea of what they wanted to do, but they really leaned on you to fill in a lot of the details on what that actually would look like, right?
Yeah, it definitely was that. It was really interesting because they did have most of the arcade laid out. They had like their floor plans and the design, and we really didn't have any input on that. Like around the lighting or anything like that. You see some of the neon lights and the mirror ceiling and the blacklight carpet. That was all figured out by the set deck departments and art departments ahead of time. But in terms of like acquiring some of the games, like they kind of had a list, and it was a pretty extensive list. It was very Atari heavy.
Yeah.
And I guess a big part of that too worked out to be that it's actually pretty easy to work with Atari for some of the licensing to use the games. I think in some cases, like they may not have even had to pay a licensing fee to show some of those games. And I understand now, after working on this project, that a lot of the Atari properties are actually owned by Warner Brothers. It's like a subsidiary
from back in the day.
Well, there's two separate companies, actually. There's two separate groups of Atari games. We actually have a master list because, after The Last of Us, Josh and I have gone off and done this for other TV shows and for a couple of other projects. And we have now been very easily been able to tell, clearance departments, like, here's a list of Atari games that you can have cleared, no problem. So like there are certain companies that like you couldn't do any work with. Like, so for the Turtles cabinet, like that's Viacom. That's Konami and Viacom, and any of the licensed property stuff is like this really nasty mix of, okay, it's great, we want to use this because it's in the script, but this other company has the rights to this IP. We just can't. And like it's the same thing with Nintendo. Unfortunately, as much as I wanted to put, like, I'm a huge Nintendo guy, and as much as I wanted to put Nintendo in there, like, and convince them like this is what would be cool, they were like, we just can't. Like, it's like
couldn't hide a sheriff cocktail in the background.
Yeah,
I legitimately tried.
Yeah, even things like our Miss Pac-Man. Like we had two Miss Pac-Mans there. Of course, the bad one, and then I had my own that I brought in, and they turned out to not be able to license it. And I remember at the time they went out to the IP holder, and it wasn't the fact of like they didn't want to or they don't do that, but at that particular time, they were not licensing Miss Pac-Man for that particular use.
Yeah.
So it may mean that they had something else happening. They maybe had currently, put that license out for some other thing that they were doing, right? And
the
so
IP around Miss Pac-Man is very complex too.
Well, but it's nothing nefarious either. Like that's the one thing you can point out is it's not nefarious. It's that they legitimately have business decisions that they're like, well, we don't want to do this right now. We don't want to, like, this isn't a good fit. It's crazy. Like, the one interesting thing that we learned is there are companies out there and there are like opposing companies, but they'll still play ball with each other. They'll still do things with each other, but for one reason or another, they'll just decide like, oh, we don't want to do this. Like it's not like a Viacom HBO thing, like you can't use turtles, like, but like, you know, it's not the end of the world. It just depends on the time of year or day sometimes.
And one other thing that we found too with like a lot of the games, certain titles had very specific things that we were allowed to do or not do. So some games, like for whatever the license fee was, you know, it might be a couple $1,000s to show like a say like a Williams pinball machine in the background, and it's supposed to be deep background or not featured, like they're not playing on it, or you're not like looking at it right close up. I remember the Street Fighter, I think, had some rule that they couldn't show gameplay. It could only be the attract screens. So there were a lot of like implications.
Deep background too.
Deep background, yeah. So they'll have like implications like that. That yes, you can do it for this fee. It covers deep background. You know, no hero shots, like nobody playing it. It can just sort of exist there in that environment, and then that's it. And it's not like featured, but so there's lots of little interesting things like that. It's never black and white. It's always a little gray.
One interesting thing that I'll touch on just to finish the whole licensing conversation bit is games that we didn't think they could license anymore. Like I've got a 1978 Playmatic Chance pinball machine. It's weird, but like when a pinball machine shows up and it's got your name on the glass, like you have to buy it. So I've got this Playmatic Chance. It's a Spanish pinball machine. And we were all kind of like gung ho, like, hey, let's submit this to clearance to try and put this in there. And they're like, no, their clearance department actually tracked down the modern day rights holder for Playmatic, which turns out to be, I think, Planetary Pinball. And they were like, it's a no-go. They're not licensing that.
Scientific Games owned it, I think, still.
Yeah, that's right. So, but yeah, anyway, so that was the licensing side of things. So if that should cover up any questions of why certain games made it and certain games didn't. Otherwise, we would have like put a lot more Nintendo and Konami in there.
We had a whole boneyard of games that didn't make the cut, and we'll show you pictures of that after. Yeah. But we had just as big of an arcade in our little bone shop as there was in the actual one that they were shooting with.
Yeah.
Was the cast and crew constantly playing backstage between shots?
Yes and no. Yeah. The girls were great. They would show up every once in a while. Josh had to actually teach them how to play Mortal Kombat, which was really cool. He got a lot of time with them as the resident expert. I guess I don't know. I guess I'll tell this story. I don't know how to tee it up to Josh, but Josh told me once that his dad, when Mortal Kombat 2 first came out, his dad said, "Oh, you'll never amount to anything playing that game." And here enough, he's now teaching the girls for the episode how to play Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, it all paid off, you know, and that game really was my jam. Like when it came out, well, you know, the first one came out and it was polarized, you know, with the blood and the guts and whatever. And Mortal Kombat 1 kind of stunk compared to 2. 2 was the Mortal Kombat game as far as I'm concerned. It's the greatest one that exists. Chance thinks it's 3. We actually had a near fist fight on set about this one day while we were debating the merits of Mortal Kombat 2 versus Mortal Kombat 3. And then we actually put a poll out there. I think we went on one of the arcade groups on Facebook and we were just like, okay, let's settle this. And we put this poll question out, like what was the best Mortal Kombat? And 2 got the most by far. So.
Look, at the end of the day, just because it's popular doesn't make it right. Like Candle in the Wind is like one of the greatest selling songs of all time. Doesn't mean it's right. Like anyway.
That's like 3 because it had robots.
Yeah. Cyrax was awesome. Smoke was awesome. Anyway, shots fired.
I forget where we were with this. So teaching the girls. Yeah, you.
Do you want me just to? Do you guys want me just to keep going through the?
Yeah, go ahead.
Pictures. Yeah, okay. So one of the other big challenges that the production team had was how do we get the script beats in the game to be repeatable? So one of the things when you're on set with a film shoot, film or television shoot, is there's this joke in The Simpsons in the Radioactive Man episode where it's like we're going to do it again and again and again and again and again and again. That's not a joke. That's legitimately our lives. You know, we'll go and we'll film. We were on set for 4 days to film 7 minutes of an arcade. Like you have to do that. You have to get coverage from 3 cameras in different angles all the time. So you have to be able to repeatedly do the same things over and over and over again. And that became kind of the crown jewel of this whole experience for us. Was Josh and I basically sat down. We told production that we would have it. So Josh and I use MAME, and you can see in this picture. And then we had our copies of the script, and on this big whiteboard here, we kind of laid out the shots that we needed to record. And we sat there with, the USB controllers for probably 2 days down in his basement. This is the opposite view from where his camera is pointed right now, actually. And we sat there for 2 days in his basement, just going through the script beats and trying to get it exactly right, to the point where like we were trying to get some of the finishing moves. And like I had to, like, I suck at Mortal Kombat. I suck at all fighting games, but like I had to learn how to play at his level to try and, be that, other side of the fight, so it looked realistic to some degree. But it did, because I mean, in the show, like one of the girls isn't as good as the other, so it kind of worked out all right, which was perfect for our situation. But no, we literally went. This is, I think, Josh's wife.
That look of intensity.
Well, it was important for us because like we wanted to get it as perfect as possible. Like
we didn't want to be screaming at our TVs when we saw it. Like I say, there's so often that whenever we see arcade games portrayed in something, I'm usually screaming at the TV like, that's not how that game works, and it doesn't have a high score save on it, and back in 1983, like what the hell's going on?
Yeah, like if you look at like Dig Dug doesn't have a leaderboard, and in Stranger Things they made a fake leaderboard for it. And that just seemed wrong.
Completely broke my suspension of disbelief.
Well, it does. Like for me, it actually does. I don't know. And that I guess brings us on to the next topic is like, okay, well, what did we do to the Mortal Kombat to make it look legit? It was inconceivable for us to use CRTs anywhere in this arcade, because like, look at your backdrop, Charlie. Like some are flickering, some aren't, depending on, your camera settings. And so we know that back in the day, people in our position as playback operators, or what motion picture video coordinators is the official title that we are in the film industry. And we know that it was hard for them sometimes to find the right tubes and set up the right frequency, and you had to convert all this stuff to make them all look good on camera. And we can do that. We have that skill set now, but with 40 monitors in the room, it just wasn't conceivable. And of course,
I got a technical question about that, right? So like, and maybe the answer is analog versus digital, right? But you go back to, let's say, the 80s, right? And things like the Starcade game show, right? Where they had a wall of screens, and also every week they had 5-6 new, arcade games set up, different monitors from different manufacturers. And at least I never noticed any kind of flicker or bars or anything from that. So was it, the cameras were different back then, or how did that work? How did they, any idea how they made it work back in the day?
I think it's a little bit of everything. Like the cameras were a little different. They were probably adjusting their shutter rates to kind of match closely. The other thing I noticed too is that flicker isn't as apparent when you're in a lightly lit studio. So lots of light, studio lights, that seems to kind of diminish that effect of the flickering a little bit. But mostly it's going to come down to your shutter speed on the camera sort of matching up there. I'd have to go look at the footage for that thing. A lot of people were talking about, because people were sort of fighting about the arcade in Last of Us, and like, they used LCDs. When they found out, they felt like they were lied to, and their whole life was a sham or whatever. But one guy got really upset. This is a Facebook group. I think it was on a CRT group.
It was on the CRT group,
yeah. And there was a guy on there that was like really, making us feel bad about it, and
just dragging you.
Losers. And
I was like, but like,
and he was like,
Josh was
Terminator
crying for it.
Terminator 2 did it or whatever. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna load up Terminator 2 and go watch the scene in the Galleria where they're running from the Terminator or whatever. And like, every freaking monitor in that arcade was flickering, but you didn't really notice it because it was lit. It was pretty well lit, and you're not really watching the games. You're watching the actors and what's going on.
Was there an opportunity to sprinkle some authenticity in there, and like have a game that was messed up, right? Have a game with collapse.
Yeah, we did.
That's what we did.
We absolutely did. Yeah.
There was no way that we were going to be able to use to replace every single monitor. And so like my Maketrax Cabaret, that thing's like mint. It's got like 320 plays in it, but like I'm not opposed to, renting it out to the TV show. So we have that in there. It's sitting next to the Robotron. So all we basically did was we just cranked the sync. And it was like at the end of the day, right? Like, well, because at the end of the day, like this was sitting for 20 years in a mall.
Right. That fits the story.
Yeah.
And they just turned it on one day.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of games games we killed the monitors on. There were, I think, the Black Widow. So that one's interesting because it's a vector game, but that one flickers in a different way on camera than, say, like a raster game, right? Where a raster game, you're getting a little more ambient sort of flicker from the light source. And where the vector, it's the lines themselves that are sort of flickering and jittering around or whatever. And we offered to kill the screen on that one, but the director was like, no, I actually kind of like it. Like, leave it there. And I remember it was probably like a few minutes before we were getting ready to film on the principal day when we were doing the main part in the arcade. And one of the VFX guys came running to me and he's like, oh, I don't like this Black Widow thing. Like, what's going on? Like, can you control the flickering? And I'm like, well, the director asked for it. And then I was explaining the difference to him about, the vector versus raster or whatever. And then the director came along and was like, nope, I want it. And it was a big ordeal. But other than that, there were really no discussions on set. We had a few CRTs in the background doing their thing. And I think it kind of added to it.
Well, at the end of the day,
a whole row of games. Go ahead.
I was going to say, at the end of the day, nobody, like professionally as a courtesy, nobody in our position is ever going to walk up to an established cinematographer and say, hey, you need to change the settings on your camera. Like we have been in some situations, like when we were working on Fargo, as an example, like we would go up to this, the cinematographer and go, hey, like, look, we're going to have issues with this. What do you think? What would you like to do? And they're like, you know what, you're the expert. Like, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. What works? Let's find a happy medium. There's a lot of there's a lot of everybody working together because everybody just wants to make cool stuff, right? But there's no way I'm walking up to Ksenia and going, hey, change your shutter speed. Like, it's just not going to happen.
No.
And we see that a lot on the groups, like some of the Facebook groups. They're like, oh, why didn't they just change their shutter speed? And it's like, okay.
Like it's there's a lot of things. Like when you're striving to make cool stuff and be as the best as you hopefully can, just because like we're not classically trained in film and television. Like I have a theater background from like college from like 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And like a little bit of reality TV experience from like 2018. But other than that, like we're not trained in any of this. We're just enthusiasts. And so if there's anything that we can do to like, we didn't know where the bar was set. And then by the time this whole situation was done, they were like, hey, we need guys like you. Do you want to come film this YA TV show and run a bunch of like cell phones and TVs and computers? So, but anyway,
that's really cool.
I'll focus on
going through the pictures. Yeah,
sure. Well, and as you're talking about it, like you've kind of mentioned this a little bit, but how were the two of you able to, tap into the local arcade enthusiast community, right? Were there games that you needed, from local collectors and they provided it, right? And like, how did that work? And then how did you get them to keep the embargo and not spill their guts about it?
Well, we know the community very well in Calgary. We have a lot of good people in the Calgary area, in especially in the pinball side of things. There's a huge pinball community here. And, we, because of the channel and just because we've been, members of some of the pinball leagues and whatnot. And it was basically, we went out to some of our friends and we said, like, look, guys, this is a list of the things that we are hoping for. Can you also provide a list of the things that you have that you'd be willing to do this? And you have to say to them, like, the company, HBO's got insurance. It's going to be really professional. Like, I put my neck out on it. Josh put his neck on it. Like, we're going to take care of your stuff when we're not there. We've got our own shop set up, which I'll show you in the pictures. We have like a much better shop. We're going to take care of it. And so some of our friends, Scott, Cam, and Doug, they stepped up and they're like, hey, here's some of our games from our pinball collection. And then, there was a couple of other local collectors that they had reached out to before they found us. And even them, they were like, yeah, like, oh, you guys have Josh and Chance. Like, we trust them. They're decent humans other than that redhead Chance. Like, Josh is a decent person. Like we'll let you guys look after our games. So we were there for any of the pickups where we couldn't provide the games from our collection. So like Andre, there was a local collector here in town who had a massive Atari collection. And so we, half of the Atari games in the set were his.
What would you say was maybe the rarest or the hardest to find or the most valuable game that was included, right? Was it the Black Widow or what was it?
My Warlord's Cocktail.
Okay.
We had a 720 there.
Yeah, we had a 720. Well, we'll see it in the pictures. Let's go through a couple of things here. Yeah. So this is when we realized that we didn't want to put an LCD in there. This is actually us fitting the cardboard from the box from a 48-inch OLED. So I figured that we could probably, Josh and I went back and forth with, do we put a projector in there and make a projection screen and like kind of bow a projector with a piece of fake Lexan? And they're like, well, do we just shove an OLED in there because we want the scan lines, we want to make it look right. So we measured out a 48-inch OLED. There was a Best Buy connected to the mall, a real Best Buy. So we spent like a lot of time over there going back and forth trying to find the right parts for this, the 3 months we were there. And one of the first things we bought was this OLED. We bought a couple of them actually because we sent it to the production to camera test it too, just to make sure that they weren't going to have any problems. So we shoved a 48-inch OLED in there. And then Josh actually
90 degrees.
Yeah, and then Josh actually took the footage. We figured out, we mapped out on the screen with a screenshot exactly where the bezels would line up. So then Josh actually took all the recorded footage that we had filmed in his basement, and he treated it and edited it and made it into the specific clips for all the different script beats and like a 15-minute attract mode sequence as well. And so while that was going on, they were, in one of the rooms or one of the stores in this mall, because we had free range of the whole mall. They were starting to construct the arcade. So as we go through some of these pictures, you'll see kind of the arcade being built from scratch with, plywood and MDO and whatnot. So one of the other things that we did when we moved into our new space, so across the hallway from where the actual arcade set was, there was a Target. It was like an old Designer Depot or some Canadian company. And so we set up a fake arcade there. So we actually, you can kind of see it in this picture on the bottom left. There's some green tape lines where the art department had drawn out a layout for us to start putting all of the games. So we kind of just started figuring out what placement was in there and started converting some of the others over. So like this Daytona USA was absolutely decrepit. I probably got like some kind of horrible disease from it.
Yeah, you needed a tetanus shot after that.
Yeah, like it was bad. But like we went and replaced all of the marquee lights and all of the games with ones that the lighting department could control. In this case, in a lot of our games, we have recordings of the attract mode that Josh would record in MAME, and then we would play back on these little HDMI boxes that we have that you just plug a thumb drive into, and it feeds an HDMI signal into an LCD monitor. And that's like, so this here, we were able to add glitching effects and whatnot to the feed for these Daytonas. There's no boards in those Daytonas. There's no CRTs or anything in there. There's just a couple of LCDs. I know there was an electronics company down in the States. We cleaned them out of every single VGA arcade monitor that we could, just because we had to. And every single, we dozens and dozens of parts. So yeah, just kind of a little bit more the boneyard. So this is the arcade as they were building it across the hallway from our new shop. And, we thought like, this is getting cool, right? Because, the stage in the background and whatnot. So this is a bit of a wide angle shot of across the hallway back in on the right-hand side where everything's laid out. That's kind of where the tape drawing of the arcade was. And then our desks on the left here where, we had our stations while we were working on projects. And it was like an all-day gig. Like Josh would come in the afternoon, in the evenings, we would hang out with the security guys. They'd always come in and hang out and walk around. We'd be there till 11 o'clock at night some days, but I'd go there at 7, 8 in the morning and just work on converting games. Every single thing that we could bring into the arcade, we had to make sure it was camera ready. We had to make sure that we had a solution if it went down. We had to make sure like Josh's Zaxxon that we used for it, the board failed. And then the board wouldn't work with the LCD monitor that we put in there. So we had to pull the whole power supply out and switch it over to, a switching power supply so that we could put a 60-in one in there.
Did you throw the Zaxxon off the roof of the mall?
No, but actually the Zaxxon accidentally had been dropped. And so we got to see firsthand, like it wasn't very far. It was like a foot. It was an accident, like a complete freak accident on a dolly. And so like, again, like HBO took care of it. It was like, no guys, like just, we'll take care of it. You know, like
They
we'll
wrote a
make sure
check for
that everything's okay.
$12 to completely
Right.
replace it.
Well, I did some of the work too in our shop. Cause like we have like a full on, like our tools aren't shown there, but like we had a full on like workshop going at this point. And
I think Jeremiah has fallen out of his chair about a foot, so he might need to make an insurance claim there.
Well, you're good. You're good.
You should have paid them for the privilege of destroying his Axon.
Yeah, right. I think that game's okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's fine.
Anyway, Josh, I know someone in town who wants to buy that from you, but
oh, I know him too. It's worth a lot more now than it was when I got it.
So this is the target here. So this is to the left of the frame. Was where Raj's arcade is, but all of our shop is behind this target, and that big giant white banner there with a family standing there, that was actually glass windows that they had covered up. So while they were building it, we could look left and we could always see like the production of the actual set that we were going to do this on, which was kind of cool. So we got to see the evolution of this as they were throwing in the roof and all the fake neon and whatnot. And then one day we showed up and the painters had been there, and like it just kind of slowly evolved. One of the really cool things about it. Sorry,
I was going to say we should talk about the blue.
Yeah, so there's a shot in the show where she comes out because they enter through the roof of the mall, and this actual mall is only one floor, and so on the far side of the mall, because it's a big loop, on the far side of the mall, the roof, which goes up another floor essentially because it's vaulted ceilings, they masked off all the windows up top, all the skylights, and then they painted this green screen blue, this chroma key blue or whatever you call it. And then they installed a bunch of lighting fixtures, so that whole hallway across from us on the other side of the mall was all one big blue screen, so they could VFX another floor in there. So when you see her come out, like that's all VFX. It's really well done. The VFX department was awesome, and in fact, all of the different different stores in the mall, like this is the smoke shop that was in the cigar shop. This thing was like the set deck department, who are like the Calgary set deck people are amazing. Every department was absolutely amazing, but like you would walk by this and it looks like a ransacked mall because they rented the whole thing essentially, and they rented what was left over from the mall.
This is the smoke shop, right?
Yeah.
And I don't even think they showed that in the show. Like there were so many little shops in this mall. This was like literally the whole mall, and there must have been probably, I'm going to say they maybe dressed up about 40 different stores.
Oh, more than that. It was like 50, 60 stores.
Wow.
Yeah. But here's the cool thing. They were so smart about it because you have to think like if you're going into an apocalypse and the world's about to end, what stores are going to be ransacked? So the smoke shop was ransacked. Yeah. The eyeglass store was ransacked. The Victoria's Secret didn't get touched. Because it's like, who's going to need lingerie in a post-apocalyptic war? There was a bunch of other stores that they just didn't touch. They just dressed and made it look legit. So there was a lot of forethought put into it, a lot of little fine details. That's the scaffolding that they put through the whole hallway of the mall. Like that Foot Locker, completely torched. They made like some of these stores didn't even exist in the Canadian market, but they went out there and they got the licensing rights to use some of these toy stores and whatnot, EB Games. Because back then, when we were filming this in Canada, it was still called whatever GameStop. EB Games. Babbage's. Now it's GameStop. Yeah. Right. So they made a GameStop sign and whatnot. So this Best Buy. So this was at the end of the hallway. This is a fake wall. There's a real Best Buy around the corner, but they just built the new sign on the end of it. So changing gears just a little, earlier in the episode, the girls go into the little photo booth, and that was actually another challenge that the art department had come to us and said like, hey, like there's all these slides from this scene in the game where the girls are in this photo booth, and like there's going to be this really like wonderful moment with the two of them. We need to figure out a way to get these slides in there, or we need to be able to get a screen in there, and we also need to have a bill collector in there because they need to be able to put the bill in. It's got to reject it. And they're like, hey, like, can you help us with the bill collector and can you help us with the screen? So we figured out the screens, we figured out the green screens, and showing that actually is kind of what proved to the playback department that we could actually do this stuff. So they started trusting us with more stuff on set. And like the props department, they, their guys, the head of props, he's like, well, you guys know how the bill collectors work. Could you take one to our props workshop and rip it apart with them? And we ended up getting a really good relationship with the guys in the props department, which leads to the camera thing, which we'll talk about later. But they built this from scratch. And the really cool thing about this photo booth is that it's completely modular. So if you want to take a shot of the girls from behind them, they would just take the roof and the back off, and they would, the girls would do their lines again for, the dozenth take, and they would film it from, every angle. So, or even just the shot of the girls ahead, they removed this whole front half so that they could see the girls' reactions in real time. So, but yeah, it was really cool. All the neon lighting was fake. It was all this LX product that they had, which was really, really gnarly. We actually tracked some of that down. It's not cheap stuff, but it's really, really cool. We thought we'd add that into this in case anyone wants to put some into their collection.
That might be cool.
It's pretty awesome. So yeah, here's the inside of the Zaxxon. Now this is cool. John,
throw that off the roof.
Yeah.
Classic.
Blasphemy.
So I think before I got involved, they had purchased this, and I think they were trying to find a way that they could record gameplay, the digital gameplay from that, and then like put it on the other cabinet somehow.
And then it got relegated to the teaching tool.
Yeah. So it actually became the teaching tool in our shop. So it sat in our shop like through the whole thing, and we were a few times when we had the girls come in and they would kind of play it. And I know the first day that we sat down with them, they didn't get a whole lot of hand time on the game because I think that was actually the first time the girls met. Was that one day in that shop?
That was, yeah.
And so they played it for a few minutes or whatever. I know that the girl that plays Riley, she came in later and she played it a bit one day, and so they did get a little hands on, and we had to coach them a bit on the day that we were shooting the principal photography for it. But yeah, I wonder where that ended up. Chance, do you know anything about that?
All I know is that the majority of anything that wasn't our personal collections ended up going into a warehouse. And the production is moved to Vancouver for the second season. That's not like private knowledge or anything. We all kind of know about it. And so I think HBO was very, very clear that they didn't want to release, sell anything that they could use down the road. That's, from what we know from the murmurs that we hear, that a lot of the games and stuff that they owned, the Mortal Kombat 2 cabinet that they owned, the Hero cabinet, that eventually will make its way. Not because it'll make it into the future season, but they want to have those assets. When a film production,
Bob Cunningham's going to move it to Vancouver.
Yeah. Well, but they want to have those assets ready in case they're going to use them. Like there was a lot of things, like in our boneyard, we had this little LED sign, it was an actual neon sign that said "Play Pinball Here."
Yeah, we
love that sign. Thing, yeah. We tried to buy it, and I mean, it's like weird that I was able to buy that Turtles cabinet. Like I actually had a back and forth with one of the executive producer, one of the executives, basically, like, who wanted it for her kids, but I said, like, I had to go and burst her bubble and say, like, I'm using this as the tool to like propose to my wife, and it's like her favorite game, and she's like, oh, okay, you can have it. And I paid them for it.
Buy that kid a 1-up.
Yeah, well, that I was gonna leave a 1-up in her office with like one of those little notes cut out of individual letters from like magazines, going like, okay, you win note. Like, yeah, exactly, be like back off. Like but okay, so moving on. So this is the food court. Like it looks like legit, like post-apocalyptic. They were so good at dressing. They had they call it the greens department that does all like the fake like leaves and stuff. So they would come in and they would dress the entire thing. So that's, you're going to see lots of that where they like destroyed them all, and you can see like all the fake leaves on the ground. That was the green department, like doing a test, like, how is this going to look? The paint department would come in and like paint all this decrepit, like dripping from the walls. It's like, we want to make it look as real as possible. So there's a lot of effort put into this to make it look as real as they can. That's
the pre-rendering of
the pre-rendering. Yeah. So that's kind of like the picture that you can see it in the previous picture. It's off on the right. That's them trying to match that look and that feel. Which is really cool. So there's, our boneyard kind of evolved over time. There's that little neon sign that we had. So they had there's a quick little funny tangent story about this. So this merry-go-round, we were told, this used to be in a mall in Calgary, at Chinook Mall here in Calgary. It was sold a number of years ago to a private collector down in Texas. So they packed it up, sent it to Texas, and then I guess production found it, brought it back to Calgary to use for the filming. Josh took a picture with, I think, your daughter.
Yeah, years
this?
ago, probably was almost like 10 years before we were there
Yeah.
on set. It was almost to the day too. It was in early January in like 2012 or something that we went to that mall, and I was on that merry-go-round with my daughter, and I had a picture. So
And then
I
literally
actually ended up
Facebook
finding
reminded you about it too.
Yeah, that day,
Decade later.
that we were there with it. Mm-hmm. And I actually went and found the horse that she was sitting on and like took a picture of it there. So it was kind of cool.
Wow.
So being that this mall was huge, like a lot of us, we just, these little razor scooters, rascal scooters, we were on them basically half the time trying to get around. But like, again, you can see now they've got the neon signs up. There's the Spencer's Gifts next door that they completely dressed out. Just kind of us testing now that the photo booth was up and running. So like one of the other things that Josh and I do now is green screens with markers. So this was one of the slides that we had up in the photo booth so that the VFX department could come in later and match the content. This is eventually how they ended up doing the shot, was adding that VFX layer in to it. We did it practically on the day as well, where I sat there with a laptop and I went through the slides. But the take with this, where they could VFX it, they had just more control over, so they chose to go that way. Josh and I actually joke that in our line of work now, when we do this for like cell phones or TV screens or monitors, that we say green is the color of failure for us, because we've gotten so proud of like being able to do it practically. Okay, so there's
we even made t-shirts.
We did,
even
yeah.
made t-shirts. I don't know.
Well, we didn't. The art department made them for us and gave them to us. They're Fargo shirts because we worked on Fargo afterwards, and they're like, green is the color of failure. So anyway, back to the arcade stuff. So I won't show this video, but one of the things that we wanted to do, because there's a Pepsi machine behind the girls, we wanted to drill out that lock so that we could open it up and pull the lighting out of the Pepsi machine. Eventually, we just ended up turning off the Pepsi machine because we probably sat there for an hour and a half trying to drill that stupid lock out. And it backfired because later, a couple of days later, when we were actually filming on the main day, I was like a couple of meters from this, but because production had walked through it as they were dressing the set, they had carried all the metal shavings everywhere onto that part of the floor. So the whole day we were actually filming, I was down on my stomach behind this ticket counter and I was lying in all of these metal shavings. Anyway, so yeah, Liberty Gardens in Boston, which was kind of weird. We have a lot of stupid pictures of me on set, so sorry. Okay, so some of the pinball that went in there, I don't think, did the Genie make it on set, or did that get cut?
Genie got cut. Yeah, Genie didn't get in.
Are you sure? Because I watched the clip and I remember seeing a Genie.
Maybe, I don't know. We had so many. We had like double the amount of pins that we needed. Like that. I think it was Mars Attacks. Sorry, was it Genie?
There's Surf and Safari. Yeah, I think Genie actually was in there. Yeah, it did.
So this was our final lineup, I think.
And then
this is the remake Mars, right? Yeah,
that was the remake Mars. So. Okay, really weird. This is owned by Arlen at Pin Bar down here in downtown Calgary. We went and changed over all of the settings to make it so that it blinks properly. We went and changed it, took the color off, but you can tell because it's the big screen, not the little DMD. But the one thing that we couldn't hide was because this is an LE, was the green armor on the pin. And by pure happenstance, when they turned on all of this crazy neon lighting, the green armor just disappeared and turned black. So that's actually a green. All the metal parts on that Attack from Mars are green, but now they're just black because of the lighting, which is really weird. And funny story, you can't see it in the final product, but so that Josh and I, that's the same Mars Attacks that Josh and I did for the Canadian Arcade. We did a bunch of episodes on a long time ago. That was when Arlen was setting up Pin Bar. That was sitting in my living room for a month. And like Vanessa and I, we put like 1,000 plays on it before it even left the house. And on the attract mode, we had put like youtube.com/the Canadian Arcade. We just left that on there when we were filming The Last of Us, because we were kind of hoping that it would show up in the loop. And
little Easter egg.
That little hidden Easter egg, yeah. So yeah, you can see it's green. But yeah, at this point now the carpet's gone in. They've added all these mirror tiles to the roof, and kind of the total placement was done. We had gone through and left like signage on everything saying like, okay, so this Make Tracks needs an LX marquee light, and this 720 needs these changes. So we were kind of doing our last ditch changes. And like a few things got moved, like that joust got moved down and the Zaxxon got moved up, or was the other way around?
No, joust was up there for the principal shots. It was there for the whole.
Oh, it was my
Yeah,
battle
joust
zone.
is prominent.
Yeah, but no, it was my battle zone got moved up to the left of where this Continental Circuit is. So we tweaked the monitor on that and put it up on top.
Can I mention? Can you go back to that previous shot?
Yeah, sure.
So you talked about how they were very concerned about catering to the 1%.
Yeah.
I do not see any fire sprinklers in this building. And as part of the 1% of people who design fire sprinkler systems, I am absolutely furious about this.
Okay, that's the 0.0001%.
I'm canceling all my subscriptions. I'm actually quitting this podcast because of this.
You say that, but also Jerry Voluptuous, a channel member in the live chat here, he is also in the fire protection business too. So
I assure you guys that like the amount of health and safety, because we did this during COVID, right? Like the entire time we were there, we were masked up with N95s. The amount of just in the Hollywood world, the amount of health and safety is amazing.
I just remember when I was watching this scene.
I was going to say, aside from the whole COVID thing, you wanted to wear an N95 mask in that mall, just because the sheer amount of dust that they added in the environment. And I think we'll probably have some pictures of that a little later on. But they literally had real like leaves and debris and stuff in the hallways. And I know like we would be out there trucking our games back and forth from our boneyard to the arcade, like as we were working on things or needed to take something back to work on it. We would sweep up a path and then you would just see all this crap in the air. I remember one day we were there with all the lights off, and I have like one of those torch flashlights, super bright, and turn that on, and just the crap that was in the air. Like, yeah, you want to wear that N95. So
we were there one night and it was like, we're in danger, like straight up. It was the creepiest thing. Cause like I said, we would work there till like midnight, 1 o'clock, and they had round the clock security. And like some weekends, like we just had to get a certain part of the project done. And we would spend, all night there, and we'd walk around and there'd be these piles of mannequins because they had pulled them out of like the 50 stores in the mall. And it was like, I was like, oh man, it was creepy. But so yeah, that actually the dust thing. So there's actually this product that they have. It's like a heavy earth. It's like a ground up seashell.
It was seashells. Yeah.
Seashell, yeah. And they'll spray it to weather certain things. And so like we had to say like, after we filmed the first day of the 4 days, it's like, this is a hot set. I think we'll show that in a little bit. We ate like kings on that set. The catering companies that we have were just amazing. Okay, so next little thing. So this is what we call a wild control panel, or a wild panel. They had us build from scratch a duplicate control panel so that in theory, I think there's another picture of it.
I think we have them side by side in one of the pictures.
We'll come back to that in a second. I think So yeah, as we finally got everything kind of laid out, you can see the wild control panel back there in the far side. Josh and I quickly took some glory snaps. We weren't probably supposed to film any of this. Just disclaimer. We're probably, we're waiting when the Ars Technica article was released about it. Like at that point, like we had kind of told people. So the Ars Technica article was like, oh crap, like we're in trouble. Like we were sitting at Pin Bar with, some people in the film community at that time, and Josh tapped on my shoulder because earlier that morning he had said he had dropped we had started talking about it in the Clov thread, on the Pinside thread, and then the Ars Technica article came out, and we're like, we're waiting for the lawyers to call us. But again, they found us. But we were very we want to be very clear that our experience was amazing. Nothing. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There was nothing. There's nothing even negative to say. There couldn't be, because it was such a good experience. Do not shake the machines. They were very diligent with the details of some of the little things that they put. Isn't that great? So I have that's the 60. I have the half size version of that down in my collection, and which is the
Remember
greatest.
we had to go through that machine and make sure there were no toys in there that were from new IPs that existed after 2003 or whatever.
Yeah, we dug out everything that they couldn't
like.
license too, except for that Bugs Bunny. We left that Bugs Bunny in there, I think, by accident.
I think that's Warner anyway, right? So
yeah, so it doesn't really matter.
Bugs Bunny in my claw machine behind me. Funnily enough. Yep, I do. I see him.
Oh, that's wicked. I love that claw machine that you have, by the way. I don't want one. If you're listening to this, please don't try and sell me one. But like, I love that. I think that's the gnarliest claw machine ever.
Good luck finding that one.
Dude, they're the greatest. As a small tangent, we have a lot of like arcade parties over in my place. They are the greatest babysitter on the planet because you just leave your kids with it. You know,
I just had three little kids over today. Some friends of mine brought their kids over, and they ran probably $30 through this one.
Oh, you're cheap. You actually make them pay.
Well, I've got a can of quarters sitting around here, but they ran about $30 through that one. They ran about $20 through this one. That's the 100-year-old claw machine. They play the video games like once, and they play the claw machines the whole rest of the time.
Well, when we first got mine in my collection, I have like Flynn's arcade tokens from the Disney thing, and so the idea was that was going to be the only game that we were going to put on tokens, and we were going to set it to like easy mode, and then like my Vanessa and I don't have kids, but like we just live vicariously through all of our friends when they come over for like Christmas parties or birthday parties or summer things. And like, so initially it was going to be like, okay, if you beat Uncle Chance on a video game, here's a token. Like, I'm not going to actually like competitively beat them, but like, here's a token, go grab something out of the claw machine. But it like after day one, we were like, okay, screw that. Like just leave the claw machine on hard and like, let the kids play it. Cause when they come down to my basement, that's all they want to do. So, here's here's the wild control panel. Of course, the buttons are in the opposite. They're reversed. Apart from it,
I actually discovered that and fixed it to match. Remember?
The last 0 hour. But
Jerry Voluptuous had a comment about the dust washers. Back to the 1%.
Yeah, sorry about that. We just there's some things that we just couldn't catch. Like we caught as much as what we could, but like at the end of the day, we looked at it like this. So we have a very good way to retcon every little bit of 1%er like rivet counting out there. This arcade essentially we feel in our own world, as our interpretation of it, was something that was an enthusiast who set it up in this mall just before the end of the world, and he had a ramshack collection of little things, and he had done some of his own tweaks to it. So we kind of think that that's a good way to answer why some of the things, like why there's a lack of certain cabinets in there, and because like obviously you wouldn't coin op some of these games,
Well, and distribution was uneven across North America, right? And plus, right, as we've all experienced in our own lives and collections and restorations and stuff, operators did crazy stuff back in the day. Like, maybe somebody out there did play a Taito mispack.
Yeah. So, but anyway, sorry, going back to it. So this wild control panel, this was designed. We never actually ended up using this, but this was designed so that the camera, we didn't do that shot at all. So that they could take the hero Mortal Kombat out. They could put the film camera where it was sitting, and then they could shoot the girls back, like face on, playing the game, so that you could kind of see their hand movements like a little bit downwards. So that's why this exists as a wild control panel. We did spend like all this time and money. But again, it's like we need to have this ability to do it if the shot calls for it. And the girls are going to do that same shot like 20, 30 different times in a 14-hour day. But we need to have the ability to do that. So it was there on hand if they decided to change it. So another look at our boneyard as we kind of started evolving things. There's my Playmatic. But one of the things that we were very, very particular on was saving all of the monitors. Anything that we took, because we're enthusiasts in our own right, we wanted to make sure that everything that we took apart, we put back together. Especially the games that belong to other collectors, we wanted to take care of them as best as possible. Like we had a cordoned off zone for all the tubes, and we faced them so that nobody accidentally necked anything. And what do we got here? So the hallway you can see is the dressings of the hallway. So we actually filmed this across 4 days. So on the first day, and it wasn't in a row. So this was January 14th. They did a wide angle shot, and that's the girls standing out looking like, oh my gosh, like here's the arcade for the first time. That was filmed on the 14th.
And then this particular picture, I will say that those are the stand-ins.
Yeah, those are the stand-ins over the. They're not the real.
A lot of times they'll have a shot. They'll have a shot set up, and as they're like getting the lighting set up and the cameras, tuned and everything in its place, like, well, they don't want the real actors standing around.
So those were the reproduction actresses.
Well,
These
no,
are the
it's
stand-ins. Yes,
it's really important. Like,
Joked in land.
Yeah, well, but when I was younger and I didn't understand how filming is actually done, I thought, stand-in, that's got to be a great, like, a cushy job. We actually know some stand-ins from some of the other projects we've worked on and how important that role is, because at the end of the day, the actors are professionals and they have to give it their all in that scene, and they have to do it, 40,000 times over the course of however many days while they're on set. So it's not practical from the standpoint of keeping them on set, because there's very little time in a day of production where you're actually filming the actual actors and the cameras are actually rolling. Otherwise it would just be a nightmare for editing. But there's a lot of hurry up and wait. There's a lot of like lighting set up and changes that are made so that the creatives can get their vision in the camera. And so the stand-ins are very important for that, where they can stand in that space. They're usually the same height, same build, same look. They put them in the exact same wardrobe, so that the lighting and the camera departments, and especially the guys who pull focus, they can practice those moves and get everything ready between each setup.
For this particular image right here, got a good question from one of my channel members, Sean, who's asking, what happened to the blue ceiling? Is this after VFX or what's going on there?
So sorry. So this is, again, the mall was a giant ring. And so like this, I think I had a map somewhere of the whole mall, but the mall is a giant ring. So the blue screen is actually on the far side of the mall, on the complete other.
They didn't
hallway.
do the whole mall like that.
No, they just did one strip that was the upstairs part of the mall. It was on the other end of the food court. So, but yeah, this one they went hard on this as far as like weathering. Like, everything got painted, every inch of everything got painted, because if you see it just for a brief second, it needs to sell it. Like, you don't want to be pulled out of the world. So answering your previous question, yes, we did mess up some of the monitors. So that's the make tracks with the broken sync. And then, of course, we got our glory shots after the first day of filming that approach scene on the 14th. We jumped in, and one of the crew members is like, "Hey guys, like, we got to take a picture of you guys in the arcade that you built, or helped build." So again, we got fed really well.
More lunch,
craft services.
Lunch. Oh man, well, this is catering. So craft services. I could never figure this out. There is a booth or a trailer or a table usually on set that's craft services, and they have all the kind of snacks and sandwiches at certain times, and another substantial later in the afternoon, like a hot snack later in the afternoon, where you actually get a chance to eat something a little bit more substantial, because a lot of the times you can't leave set, you're so busy. And so if you need something like, I need a stick of gum, or I need coffee, or I need a pep and ched or something, you can go over to craft services and get some fruit or whatnot.
Is that like poutine?
Well, right. But in the morning and at lunch, because everything's really regimented with the time schedule, just how the unions work, it's really cool. We are fed really, really well in most cases. And so this is like, I think we had, lunch that day at around, 6:45. That was our lunch, because our call time was like 1 o'clock, I think. 12 o'clock, I think, because it's 6 hours after. So then anyway, so after we filmed that first day on the 14th, we made this big sign called Hot Set. And at this point, Hot Set means you can't touch anything on set, because now they've established that shot and you're not allowed to change anything.
But they did.
They did. That Omega race in the background. I can't remember why. It's probably not important. But
it was because it was flashing on and off. The marquee.
Oh, it was the marquee blinking. Light was going on and off.
Yeah.
And I think we pointed that out. And instead of changing it, they're like, well, like in changing the lighting settings, the decision was, can we pull that out and can we put another game in there? And at this point, the only thing left that we had that hadn't been cleared was like 2 or 3 games. One of them was another Robotron. And that Robotron is the like, it's in the cloth thread. It's the homemade.
It's the one everybody pointed out that was.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, like, can we
Those
just move
darn
my
one
Robotron
percenters.
over? Yeah. Well, no, that was like the 5%. They were like, hey, that's not a real Robotron. So anyway, we came back a couple of days later on the 17th, and we did like a shot with this big giant ultra quiet techno crane that would like that's that shot where it pulls out and then pulls down the hallway. That's like a 30-foot long crane. That thing's amazing. It takes like a team of 5 people, and every single one of the guys that run those cranes, like, they're artists in their own right to be able to do that. Like, it's really, really cool. You can imagine like having an RC car and then controlling it with 5 separate people.
Can you play? This is a video, Chance. I think this is a video. Are you able to play the clip? Will it work here?
No, I think that's the still. Yeah,
I know you had a
still.
video of it.
I don't think it's in this gallery. Okay, so going back to the Hero Mortal Kombat really quickly. So this is kind of how we operated the Mortal Kombat. So Josh and I sat down and we choreographed all the fight scenes based off of the script beats. Josh went and treated all of those. We went back and forth with Josh's collection in his house, like just around the corner from where he's sitting right now. He's got the same monitor in a cabinet that would also be in this Mortal Kombat. So he tuned the chromatic aberration and the little bit of a bubble on the look to match the CRT, roundness of the CRT and the scan lines as close as he could to it. And then we threw all that footage into files, into VLC. And then we have a stream deck here that's set up with all the different script beats for the 2 scenes that we're going to film here on the 18th. And that was the main day that we shot it. So I basically had this set up. This was just a test. And just minutes before we started filming, actually, because we have a 50-foot HDMI cable running from this MacBook Air over to that OLED that's sitting into the Hero Mortal Kombat. And just minutes before we went to film this, they had to move the Mortal Kombat because electrics had to get in to change something underneath it. And I don't know, there was a miscommunication or something, and the HDMI cable got ripped out of the back of the TV. So like we're literally, we've got, 100 people here in a film crew, worth, hundreds of dollars a second trying to film this entire day. And it's about to accidentally come crashing down. So like Josh and I jumped in there and like, as calm as Hindu cow, like we jumped in there and like replaced the HDMI cable and got it working. And like there was a
special cable too. It was an optical
HDMI.
Yeah.
To run it at 50 feet.
Not a gold plated one from Best Buy.
No. I used to sell those back in the day, a monster cable. But when you have a 50-foot HDMI cable, at 4K like this, we have to be able to send the full signal to it. And so at that point, it kind of does matter what your cable is. So this was an optical HDMI cable that we had. Thank goodness we had bought 2 of them, and thank goodness for Amazon, because like, the day before we had to arrive so that we could do this, because we had done tests to make sure it would work. Just kind of like thinking ahead of what all the problems could be. And so this was kind of like that morning, my setup, I was getting ready, and then I realized, crap, like they're going to be filming this direction. Like I'm hot. Like I can't be in this shot. I'm going to be in the shot. It's hot. This part of the set's hot for me. So it's like the decision was made to hide me behind the film or the ticket counter. So the entire day like a puppeteer. Yeah. Like the world's worst puppeteer. I'm sitting behind this film counter. So I've got in front of me, I've got my Stream Deck. I've got my MacBook, which is operating that OLED in the Mortal Kombat as the second screen. And then to the right, I've got an iPad with our viewer that I can see all 3 camera feeds. So I can see where the girls are pointing. But half the time, because in one ear, I've got my on-set headset where I can listen to and talk to the crew and, the director and whatnot. But on the other ear, I've got what's called a ComTech. And that's a way that I can get the sound department to pipe in the sound of the actors on set so I can hear what they're saying, so I can interact with them in real time. So when the girls walk up to the cabinet, the 15-minute attract mode is going. But then when I hear them drop that coin, just because of my experience in coin op, I know, I've got to press button 2, and that's going to switch over to the coin drop screen. And then, when she hits the start button, I press the next button that switches to the character selection. And the entire time, the girls are miming that with their hands. And Josh is, while I'm sitting here in the, in the metal shavings from the pop machine on my stomach the entire 18 hours of the day, Josh is actually off in the distance. See, there's me. Josh is actually, how do we get that off my butt? Josh is actually sitting in a nice comfy chair with the directors and producers and script supervisor, working, with the actors and the, the what we call the adults, just saying like, okay, that movement wasn't right, or that movement was great. Like, how do we make this as realistic as possible? HBO was really, really focused on making sure that like little things like that were sellable.
So you really were almost like a puppeteer, right? In the pit, except instead of controlling Alf or Kermit the Frog or whatever, you were controlling the game, right? That kind of goes to another question that channel member Sean was asking about. Did the actors actually play the game while filming, or was it someone/something else? And it was actually you down in this pit.
Well, it was Josh and I that had played it like 2 months before, and we actually.
Right, so you're like hitting those pre-recorded segments.
Yeah, and then the girls were doing a really solid job, and because they take the same take over and over and over and over again, and then they change. If you've ever seen like a clapper, like those slates, that is the code for what shot they're on, what take they're on, what angle they're on, what film roll they're on. What the LUTs they're using for that scene is, and we for another show that we worked on, I won't mention what it was, but we filmed this one shootout scene. We were there for like 3 days filming like a 30-second scene because they needed to get every single angle of that action. And so for this, like, no, we had pre-recorded. That was like the whole point of this, is Josh and I had pre-recorded all of that stuff. And then we had it all prepped. At one point, since from the point where we pre-recorded it to this day on the 18th, when we were filming, we actually had a show and tell with Craig Mason and all the other producers and everything. And we were showing them like, look, okay, I think we've solved your problems. And Paul, the assistant director, first assistant director, first AD, yeah, Paul comes over to us and he's like, where I'm from, they just press a button, because we were using VLC to click between all of the different scenes. He's like, where I'm from, because he's like massive, like Paul's huge. He's like, where I'm from, they just have a button that they just press and it just does it. So like literally the next day I Amazoned a Stream Deck and I had it set up and I was like, okay, Paul, like if we got a button now. Here's your button. And so here's your button. And just like the look on his face, he's like, oh man, these kids, like I can't stump these kids. Like, but anyway, so yeah, it was pre-recorded content. And then, of course, we moved the production in a little bit further, closer. And so now they've moved Video Village, where the directors and the script supervisor sit, and Josh kind of, ever so slowly is getting further into the arcade. So anyway, we thought that was it. And okay, cool. 14-hour, 16-hour day on set. We've had now 2 days where we filmed the arcade. We think it's done. So we start, we've been here 2 months. We start packing up, started making lists on things like, okay, the Daytona, pull the LCDs, pull the playback boxes, pull the LX lighting, burn this thing in a fire, specifically because that Daytona and I were nemesis. And so we get around and we labeled all the arcade games, and there's one on Mortal Kombat, what we had to do to it to put it back to normal. And then, a few days later, we had started ripping apart all of these rented games that they had pulled from a company out in Eastern Canada and getting them ready to go, because these were all like the fake ones that they had rented before we got involved. And just like running little game elves and whatnot. I think I have too many pictures of those. Yeah, here they are. These are the 8 that they had. Not all of them got used, like the Jam or the Double Dragon or the Burger Time for that matter. But so we got this all ripped apart. And then a little while later, the production comes to us and they go, okay, we got to do a pickup shot. And we're like, we just tore half of the arcade apart. And they're like, okay, we'll put it all back together. Well, okay, yeah, sure. Whatever you guys need. And so we threw everything. We like literally took another couple of days and we did it like overnight kind of thing. Because it was just cost effective. Is just you're spending so much effort to get the shot that they had to come back around and say, well, like we need this other angle, we need this other shot, we're missing this. So they'll come back and they'll do it. And we got it thrown together. In fact, we were so last second doing the last little bits of restoring everything the way it is. Josh or one of the other crew took this picture of me hiding because they said action and they started recording before I could get out of the room. You were still in
the arcade.
Yeah, I was stuck.
I was in behind the wall somewhere.
Yeah. They're filming the girls walking through this one shot, and like I had to duck down behind the Zaxxon because I literally couldn't hold production up to get out of the room. I couldn't. There's a fake room around the corner behind that Robotron. I couldn't get out. I had to hide behind the Zaxxon in order to get this done. So
that's our next T-shirt. I had to duck down behind a Zaxxon.
The Zaxxon was finally worth something. It did something.
Yeah, exactly.
No one's
That's all it's
asking on
good
the
for.
Zaxxon, so don't worry about it.
Yeah. So that for the most part was pretty much the arcade. There's a couple of little things we think might be cool that we'll show you guys. So we, they I guess they liked us. They probably won't after seeing this because we're giving away trade secrets, but we're saying a lot of nice things about the people. So hopefully they'll invite us back. But we got to tour the production. So like that entire cul-de-sac that, that they had that big
Episode 5, I think.
episode 5, that was all built. There's pictures of this all over the internet where they had actually built all those fake houses. So like this is the model that they had of that, which was really cool. I'm probably gonna get in a lot of trouble for showing this picture. But yeah, and then we ended up getting a tour of some of the hallways, some of the other sets in the studios, and we weren't anything. We're still not anything in the film industry. We're just happy to be on board where they'll have us. So it was big for us that they were like, come on, like come tour our sets, and like that whole museum thing that they have, I think in the first episode where they go into the Boston Museum.
Episode 2.
That's episode 2. That's a set. That's a 70-story tall set.
Or
You can
70
walk
foot or something. Yeah.
70 foot. Yes. Sorry, 70 foot tall set that you can walk out of up at the top and like look down and see like scaffolding everywhere. This is so cool. This was all built by some of the most amazing craftsmen that I've ever met in my life. And they're Calgarians, like they're Albertans. Like we have the capability here. The guys are amazing. And even our crews are so great. Like we hear this all the time when people from Los Angeles or New York come out, or Vancouver come out here. They're so happy to work with Albertans because we're so, not that other people aren't, but like we leave such an impact about how great our crews are, how professional and how lovely and how like funny and nice our crews are to work with. So so like when you walk out of the door up here, there's a door and you turn around. This is a video. I don't know if I'll just kill the audio.
It's coming through. Yeah. The video's coming through.
Perfect. Like that's just surreal to me that's on a sound stage, and you're 70 feet up in the air. It's almost Halloween. I don't know why that's in there. In case anyone was falling asleep, that's take one bag of Sprite. So anyways, so that was it for us. And we're like, okay, wrap it up, heavy, whatnot. And then so small side tangent story, because Josh and I had debated on how we were going to run the Mortal Kombat from day one. And one of the methods that we were going to do was projection. We were going to try and like take, the tube of a 25-inch tube, 23-inch tube, and we're going to try and vacuum form a screen and make a little projection screen. And that just wasn't going to work. And that's why we went OLED. But some of the props and art department and set decoration departments heard about that. And so they're like, hey, in episode 1, we've got this scene where we've got these old giant cameras. We're going to have this shot where they track behind it. We need to be able to make that little CRT viewfinder on the back of these cameras work. So eventually, that's that there. So, I spent 2 weeks, this was with May. So this is a couple of months later. I spent 2 weeks in the prop department with them, kind of like developing this technique where we use projectors and we gutted these old NBC, these were from the 60s. We gutted these old production cameras, and so we shoved Pico projectors and Nikon DSLRs in the lenses so that we could do 2 separate focal points. And then we've connected this all up, and then where is it? Yeah, we tested like every single Pico projector that I could get my hands on for flicker. That's not important. That's in the last episode, the elevator. So the digits, that's him controlling, what floor he's going to. This is totally full of spoilers for anyone who hasn't watched the show, by the way. So yeah, we ended up getting these running, and as a proof of concept, we played an episode of the Canadian Arcade on the projectors to make sure that it worked.
There you go.
But we took the glass panel from one of the intact CRTs from these cameras, and we vacuum formed these tiny little projection screens. And we must have done this I think 30 or 40 times to make, to find the material that would actually work so that it wouldn't look pixelated and sparkly through the projection screen. And, we finally settled on a projector that would work. And, we made all these little plexiglass shelves and whatnot inside the camera. Yeah, so like all the different screens, because I was probably like a week there. I was testing different screens that would work for backlighting them. And then we made 2 of them, because you have to have 2 because there's 2 in the shot. And then, we wired them all up. So all the lights on the camera, all the little dials on the back, the little live light, they blink. We had a guy offset on the day that was changing, camera 1 or camera 2, which one was blinking for which one was live when they filmed that 1970s intro. And yeah, so that was pretty cool. You can see how they're like one's like a close up, one's telephoto and one's wide angle. And then, that's kind of what became of that. So little side note, we can get rid of that. So yeah, that was the Canadian Arcade does Hollywood for the first little bit. And while we were wrapping up, we got a phone call saying like, hey, do you guys want to work on a Netflix show? So it's been like in the longest roundabout way in the last hour and a half of talking about this, that's why we haven't done episodes of the Canadian Arcade, because we've been doing Hollywood stuff. Yeah.
What was it like? So when it was all said and done, right? And the episode is aired, it was out a couple months ago. When it was all said and done, what was it like going back and watching the final product on TV?
Josh? I had the script for episode 7. It was actually funny because it was supposed to be episode 8. The way they filmed them, we were told this was episode 8, and then they actually combined episode 1 and 2. So what they had originally filmed as 1 and 2 just became episode 1, and then everything shifted down an episode number. So anyway, episode 7, I had the script for it, and I could have read like the whole episode, but I really kind of kept myself away from it and just focused on, okay, I know our scenes are, between this and this, so I'm only going to look at these pages. I don't want to spoil anything. So, it was kind of weird for us. I have to say, like, working on the show, we saw a lot of behind the scenes stuff that were outside of our episodes. Like, we would hang out at the props department, or we were in like the sound stages. So we saw a lot of things that they had used
deer
around. And also living in Calgary too, obviously we see places where they were filming and like, hey, I know that's like down the street from my house, or the thing where they get to that tunnel and it's all blocked off and they have to turn around and go back. That's literally like a 3-minute
block away from Josh's house. Yeah.
So through the show, there were little things that kind of like pulled me out of it a little bit, because it's like, oh, hey, I've seen that before. But for episode 7, and I'll be honest, like I knew the Last of Us story. I kind of got the idea of it. I had never played the game like before the show or before I worked on it. I didn't really know too much about its lore or like how things work through the story. So watching the show the first time was like a surprise. We worked through the story just like anybody else would. But I'll have to say it was pretty surreal, that moment when they showed that shot of the girl standing outside the arcade. And I think for us, like, there was this fear, like, oh, maybe they cut the whole scene out of it. Like, we didn't know, because we worked on it.
They didn't show any of it in the teaser. And
yeah, there was nothing on the teasers or anything. And I'll have to say, probably through the whole series, that 7 or 8 minute scene was probably the most colorful thing through the whole series so far. So it was really like kind of a high point for the show, I think, and in that it was so colorful, and there was this sort of love story in there too, and some sadness at the end. But yeah, it was quite surreal seeing it the first time, and like I just had chills like when I was watching it. Like we watched it the same time it premiered, and yeah, it was hard to describe. And I mean, we were really, you're always your own worst critic. So I think we were really looking at like, oh, we could have probably done that a little better, or this could have been done a little better, or I wish we had more time to do that. I think we learned a lot.
It was a year between when we filmed it. It was roughly a year before the episode aired. And because like it takes time to do all the post-production stuff and to wrap everything up. And I think like I knew something was up in that none of the previews, none of the like next time on The Last of Us, they would show the arcade. And I think that was such like the Mortal Kombat scene was such a pivotal thing. And I also didn't play the game. I'm an Xbox and Nintendo guy. So like I had never had any experience with it whatsoever. But unlike Josh, I read the whole script for that episode. And I think, going forward in the future on any program that we work with, like I try not to read the script I get like Josh and I work professionally together with what we do. So it's like, I will just like, we worked on a movie and I was like, dude, just give me what that shot needs for this cell phone, or give me what that needs. Cause like for me watching that episode, like it was weird. Like I wanted, my wife was sitting right next to me and I wanted to just like, hey, oh, that part, it was this and that. Like, I didn't want to ruin it for her. And it kind of like, I knew how the soup was made.
Yeah, and I say that's how I apply it to almost anything I watch now, even shows I haven't worked on. Now things jump out at me as like, oh, okay, that's how they did that, and oh, that actually kind of looks fake, or they didn't do that very well. And I find myself noticing those things a lot more now after having worked on like a few different TV shows and a movie and whatever. Now, it's kind of.
And you guys have touched on that a little bit, right? You've been saying Netflix, you've been saying Fargo, right? Can you share anything more about these other projects that you've been working on, and what we can look forward to?
Yes and no. So obviously, NDAs and all that kind of stuff. We legally, I mean, we're breaching our NDA, I think, at this point with The Last of Us. I think that's
NDA never expires.
NDA never expires. But like, this is such a cool thing and it's so arcade focused and like, we're so proud of it. We want to do it justice and all the hard work that everyone put into this, especially the crews here. But like, okay, so we've now, as soon as we got done, we weren't even done wrapping up our boneyard on The Last of Us. And we had gotten a call from a Netflix show and they're like, hey, this next summer, we're going to be filming this entire show. It hasn't aired yet, so I won't say its name. But like this YA thing, like we're gonna have a ton of cell phones, we're gonna have a ton of laptops, iPads, and screens. So there was an arcade scene in it actually. So like we need you guys to come in and do what you do, because like there was.
And I'll mention too, with that arcade scene, it was the most technical, hard thing I've had to do. With an arcade game ever, and still is the hardest thing I've had to do. And I'll explain that someday. But
one day when that comes out,
we'll have to have you guys on to talk about that. YA means young adult, or
young adult.
What's that?
Yeah, young adult. I learned that term working in this industry. Now I didn't know YA, or like in the novel they call YA literature or whatever. But it's really good.
Speaking of young adults, we might be past Jeremiah's bedtime back there in the corner.
I thought YA stood for Ye Are Kung Fu, so that makes a lot more sense now if you say that.
So we did that. We did that show. We did there was a Tegan and Sarah. Oh yeah, we can talk about this. There was a Tegan and Sarah bio series that was done. It's already aired, called High School. So there is we worked for a week on that, where there was a little pizza parlor and they needed a little arcade of like a crane and like a half dozen arcade games. So we built that. We spent a week building that. And then it ended up being like 13 seconds in the background blurry, which is totally fine. The arcade was still there.
Still got paid.
We still got paid. We set the mood. It was the thing. And then, not long after that, when we were wrapped on all of those projects, we got a call to work on Fargo, which comes out this November, which we're stupidly excited for. And I think on Fargo, there was no arcade stuff on Fargo that we had to like touch on, but like we got to use every single trick and invent new tricks, for cell phone interactions or for TV interactions, or like anytime you see a TV in the background, in a scene, if it's sitting in a waiting room, like that TV, that's us running it. Or if that cell phone, if they do an insert shot of that cell phone, that's us running it. And Josh actually had this really great idea at one point, because there was this scene where a character had to interact with the cell phone. And we designed this through Josh's idea. We designed this really cool, like mixture of a green screen wireframe that VFX really liked and that the actors could interact with, so that the actors don't have to like guess where they have to touch on the screen when they do that shot. And it was so successful that we got that shot in one take, and that was in one of our first shots. So it was like, we kind of know like, okay, great. Like we can do this. We can do better. Yeah. But like I said, there was no bar set for us. So like, we just want to make cool stuff and make it easy for production to be able to do things. So we're really passionate, and we want to do more of this. So, now that the strikes are going, hopefully this podcast hasn't ruined that for us, but we just want to make the best stuff that we can. So,
well, you guys did an amazing job, right? Despite some of the little rivet counters, right, type of stuff, and Jerry's dust washer, you guys did an amazing job.
Sorry, Jerry.
We'll get the dust washer right next time.
There you go.
Yes.
And
thank you.
we, I think I speak for all of us, my co-hosts and all of our viewers and listeners. Thank you guys for coming on the program and sharing the story with us. Absolutely amazing. All those exclusive photos, really, really, really cool. And again, you guys did an awesome job, sharing, the passion that we all share for this hobby, sharing it with a, mainstream audience. I mean, still technically video game related, right? But, plenty of people who are watching the show that haven't played the game. So thank you for sharing all of this with us.
You're welcome. And
Yeah,
there will
fun.
be more. We've got, as soon as this all ends, like there's a future. We've been talking. So like we'll hopefully we get a chance to do this again and take it to another level. So like anything we can do to promote the hobby and wherever possible, like we're there. So we'll help.
Well, we won't. We're going to get canceled by the film studio, but it was a nice ride while it lasted.
Yeah.
Hey, I didn't sign
Thank
an
you,
NDA, right? Guys, so Josh and Chance, thank you again so much. And I know we've talked about this already, but in the meantime, until we have you on again for the next time, where can folks find you guys on the internet?
Well, youtube.com/The Canadian Arcade. We have been keeping something from you guys. We do have a new episode of The Canadian Arcade that will be airing any second now. The moment this podcast is done, because I don't want to cannibalize your audience, I've spent the last week in my office editing another episode of The Canadian Arcade. So you will get Atari Tempest Cocktail Restoration Part 1.
Oh, you're muted, Charlie.
Oh.
See, if you had told me that, I could have set it up. I mean, I'd probably break it. I could have set it up to like push the stream viewers to the premiere of your episode, but
I'll send you the link
We
right
talked
now.
about that.
Yeah, but
Put it
at the
in
end of
the
our
chat.
episode, yeah, okay. At the end of our episode, here, you know what? I'm just gonna.
Yeah, we were talking about how we could make this really meta, and we've actually done something similar as the end card on ours. So it links
so
back
on
to
our end
this
card, it'll link
podcast.
back to this. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. Let me just go into it without starting it. Let me copy that.
grab that link.
We just wanted that to be a little surprise. I'll put that there in the private chat on the thing so that you can add that at the end. But we just wanted that as a little thank you for you guys for having us on. Because like this is cool. Like I don't know.
You guys are cool.
Yeah,
Thanks
we-
for
Nah.
doing this.
We need to.
We just play cool
we
on
need to-
TV.
That's right.
But yeah,
Load it
so
up.
sweet. So we tried to keep it to 22 minutes, 23 minutes. Because like after 2.5 hours of this, like, do you want more chance?
Hey, it's still early. A lot of people don't have work tomorrow. But so until we get to that, let's go around the horn of the other guys. Started with Kay. Where can everyone check you out, Kay?
So you can find me on TikTok and Facebook. My Facebook page is mostly my business stuff. So if you're looking to actually, purchase a product or something like that, that's where you find me. But if you just want to see my content about how I do repairs and pickups and restorations and just little things I do along my job there at the shop, TikTok at @prime_arcade is where you're going to find most of my content.
Awesome. Wake up, Jeremiah. How about you?
My name's Jeremiah, and you can find me at the Coin Up Corner YouTube channel. I do videos where basically the whole restoration is in one video. So there's a lot of editing. And if you like technical editing, if you do editing yourself, there's a lot of in-jokes with that kind of stuff you'll like. There's also jokes about cats and things like that. So if you like any of that stuff, check out Coin Up Corner.
And Liam.
You can find me and my wife at Retrobotics, youtube.com/Retrobotics, and on Caleb under 64-bit. We do a little bit of everything: video, arcade, pinball, jukebox, that kind of thing. Whatever I can find the time to make a video about with Sam.
Awesome. And of course, I'm Charlie from Overtime Arcade. If you're watching this right now, you're watching this on my channel. Appreciate everything from everybody. Josh and Chance, you guys have been awesome. Everyone here that's been watching live, I'll get back to you a sec.
Okay.
Everyone here that's been watching live, thank you so much. Hit that like button if you like this. Go and subscribe to the Canadian Arcade if you're not subscribed already. go subscribe to Coin Up Corner and to Retrobotics and create a TikTok account. It's not just, crazy dances and whatever. Kay does awesome stuff there. I want to give a very special thank you to Jerry Voluptuous and Ezekiel, the Chicago Retro Ranger, for the very generous super chats. And Chance, I'll kick it back to you before I wrap it up.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. You said earlier in the day, like if there's anything that you're looking for, I got to thank my wife for, putting up with my crap today for this. I need to find her tapper tap handles. I had to mention that. You asked earlier if there were any parts anyone was looking for. I want tapper tap handles really badly for her tapper, and I need the one, not the 3D printed ones.
For sale on Club recently.
There was, yeah, and I missed out on that by like 20 minutes. And he had 3 sitting there. So yes, tapper tap handles. If you haven't heard it enough from me, you'll hear it in the video.
And you don't want the 3D printed ones.
Don't want the 3D printed ones. I want to, because I know those have the M6 threads. I can thread those on. But I've got a couple of Galaga Galaxian sticks. I'm going to modify. I just need the.
With regard to 3D print, is it the repro or is it the texture? I'm just curious about this.
The texture, the mold lines.
All right. So there is a way to get around that. Have you considered using a resin printer?
Yes. Yeah. We tried printing some resin ones. I tried resin casting some of my own. I just need the actual. There's the guys who made them a few years ago on Clov. They've got like a destruction video on YouTube where they like drive over it, throw it in some boiling water. Even those repros, if I could find those would be great. But if I could find an original set, I want to thank my wife for helping me out and putting up with me for 3 months while we filmed this. So if there's anyone out there who knows
signal
them,
up, get that bat signal up. Anyone out there, Chance's wife needs tapper tap handles.
Yeah. I'm getting a text message from her right now.
I'm gonna hit send. I just put the link to the new premiering episode of the Canadian Arcade. I'm gonna say thank you to Kay, Jeremiah, Liam, especially Chance and Josh. Thank you guys so much. Thank you everyone for watching. I'm gonna try to make this work. We're gonna go to the music, to Jeremiah's music. Hopefully it's playing now. We're gonna go to the intro. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next month.